Spanning the globe to bring you the constant variety of art, it's the Tenant Podcast. I'm Todd Pearson, coming to you from the 40 West Arts District in Lakewood, Colorado. And joining me from his podcast studio in Rapid City, my partner and friend, South Dakota's favorite son, Wes Brown.
Oh my God. It's such a great, crazy week. I read headlines that Kristi Noem may come back and run against Senator Rounds. And I decided at that point, if that happens, I'm quitting my job and I'm going to campaign across the entire state of South Dakota against Kristi Noem. Anyway.
I think you should do it.
Anyway.
If I was a resident, well, let's just call it what it is. Like,
yeah.
Anyway. I think we moved beyond that whole thing at this point.
So that was my exciting news for the week.
If you run, maybe I'll move to South Dakota so I can vote for you.
You bet. Well, I'm not running. No, I'm not running.
I thought you were going to.
No, I'm not running. No.
Oh,
I'm going to campaign against Kristi Noem.
Oh, okay.
I'll have my car wrapped in anti-Kristi Noem stuff, and I'll be speaking with a bullhorn and getting rallies together just to shut her down and send her back to wherever. So, however, I think most of that conversation was all hypothetical. I don't think there's any truth to it. And Senator Rounds is okay. I like him.
Okay.
So
I think you should run. You know more about government than
definitely bear. More than Kristi. What is habeas corpus?
Oh God!
Good God! Well, anyway, enough of Kristi.
Yes,
rent free at the Tenant Podcast.
Really, we gave her time.
I know.
On the podcast.
Yeah,
that's ridiculous. And it wasn't even like a bit or any kind of a joke thing. Yeah. Like, well, it's a joke.
She's a joke, but
yeah.
Anyway,
hey,
how are you doing?
I am doing excellent. I keep forgetting to mention this, but our friend Leo Tanguma has a fantastic exhibition. It's downstairs at Lakewood United Methodist Church in Genesis Gallery. It's entitled Leo Tanguma, Chicano Muralist, and it features his cultural and political paintings and drawings, with the featured portion of the show being a mural in progress entitled Democracy versus Fascism. It's pretty spectacular. It's like 3 or 4 panels. They're huge panels. You can find him in the gallery working pretty much every day of the week when the gallery is open, from 9 to 1 on weekdays and 11 to 3 on Saturdays. He also has invited the community to come join him. So if you want to paint with a master, you can come down to Genesis and help him with this mural. And if you're not familiar with Leo, he's amazing. We interviewed him early on in our podcast. It's episode number 8, if you want to check it out. And he's known, in case you've probably heard about this whole Illuminati, like conspiracy theory stuff, but he's the guy that you hear about that has the murals in Denver International Airport. But he dispels that in our interview. It has nothing to do with the Illuminati or any other crazy nonsense. That exhibition runs through the 21st of March, and Lakewood United Methodist Church is located in the 40 West Arts District here in Lakewood at 1390 Brentwood Street. So come check it out. Yeah. It's really cool. He's got huge pieces in there. The gallery looks amazing right now.
Yeah, and when we interviewed him, we were in his studio in the basement of his house, and that was an amazing experience. And if you're new to this podcast and you haven't listened to the back episodes, his is definitely one of my favorites. In fact, we've played him twice. My granddaughter introduced it.
We did a rewind.
My granddaughter introduced it as one of her favorites. So great interview, wonderful story, very compelling. We did it live, so it was, right face to face. So it was amazing. So I'm excited for Leo's show, and I think it's going to be phenomenal. So check it out.
You know what I love about Leo? What? If you go over to his house and he's working, he's like a little kid. He draws. He lays down on the floor and draws, like you would imagine a little kid. And he's in his 80s.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Interesting guy. All right. You ready to do this tenant thing?
Let's do the tenant thing.
We've been gabbing for a while. Yeah. I guess we're like ready to check out how long we've been on this thing. It's good to see you, my friend.
It's good to see you.
You look magnificent.
Thank you.
You look so much better with a smile than a frown.
Well, life has been interesting this past month, so it's trying to get me down. But I see you, and My life sparkles.
Okay, I'll take that. All right. It's two for the price of one this week on Tenet. Joining us is Annie Geimer, Director of Special Projects and Curator at the Denver Theater District, and David Moke, Director of Programming at the Denver Theater District. They're here to talk about a multitude of things that the Denver Theater District facilitates, including Understudy, an art incubator, and Night Lights Denver, amongst other visual art programming facilitated by the district. You can follow Understudy at understudy_Denver, the Denver Theater District at Denver Theater District, and Night Lights Denver at night_lights_Denver on Instagram. And you can check out all these entities and what they offer via the Denver Theater District webpage at denvertheaterdistrict.com. Annie and David, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm going to start this off by asking you to talk a little bit about who you are, some of your history and experience that you have leading up to these roles that you currently have at the Denver Theater District. So Annie, we'll start with you first. Ladies before gentlemen.
Absolutely. How far back would you like me to go?
All the way.
Yeah,
all the way. So I grew up here. I'm born and raised from Denver. David and I actually went to high school together. So we've known each other for a very long time. We went to George Washington High School. And being from here, really wanted to make sure that I went to college somewhere else before. I love Denver and love Colorado, and I knew I wanted to live here later in life, but I wanted to go elsewhere for college and didn't want to go to school with a bunch of people that I knew. So my dad's from Illinois. I ended up going out to Chicago a lot with him for Thanksgivings and, family stuff. And I went to college in Chicago at DePaul University. And it was the absolute best experience. I had the most amazing college experience, just compared to living in a smaller city. And Denver, wasn't as developed at that time. We didn't have a lot of public transit. We didn't have, a bunch of other things readily available. I think in high school, we went to the movies a lot and the mall. So I went to school for communication at DePaul, and really they had a ton of open electives. And so I took a lot of classes for non-music majors. They had a big arts program at the school. So I spent a lot of time just around artists, and my job was sitting at the front desk of the dorms. So I met people constantly and just really exposed myself to a lot of different art opportunities and, cross platforms. So theater and music and performing arts and visual arts. And I ended up working as an intern at this really amazing space called the Experimental Sound Studio. And that's in Ravenswood in Chicago, so a little north of the city. It was owned by a husband and wife. It's still around. And the wife curated the gallery in the front, and there was a sound and recording studio in the back. And I would, gallery attend for them, host events with them, and really got exposed to this sort of combination of music and arts that just really stuck with me. And that they became a family outside of my own family, and I spent a lot of time there. So that was pretty formative for me. And ended up, after graduating from college, I worked for a group that was a subsidiary of Chicago Public Radio that did audio documentaries. So I stayed in Chicago for a while, and then working for an arts nonprofit at the time in Chicago, I couldn't make enough money. So I decided to move back to Denver. And I can never remember the years, so I'm really bad at that. Sorry. But I graduated college in 2009. So came back, and I decided at that point I wanted to get into the music industry. So I volunteered I guess I got paid $100 a week to be a street teamer for AEG, putting up posters on Colfax, and ended up, I was working at the time doing other things with my high school teacher's tutoring company, but really did music festivals. I guess David comes in here at some point, so we can kind of tether back to that.
Sure.
But I ended up doing music festivals for a while. That was probably 6 or 7 years, and took me to San Francisco for 2 years, and I eventually wanted to be out of that fast-paced circuit. So I came back, but this is also related to how I know David and how we work in the arts now. So I don't know, David, do you want to chime in on something, and then we can get full circle?
You want me to go tell them your life story, I can do that pretty well too if you want.
No, I mean, you're the next part of this chapter of my life story that I was about to explain. But
yeah, so just quick background, and I'll catch up to where Annie was just at. So I basically, when I was 10 years old, I had the flu sitting on the couch. And all of a sudden, I'm watching Warped Tour, and a song by the band The Living End comes on called Roll On. And all of a sudden, my mind exploded. It was like, this is really cool. You know, that perfect age where you're discovering music. Before then, everything was very Weird Al Yankovic or the Pokemon To Be a Master soundtrack. So all of a sudden, to like discover like punk music and then everything else opened me up to a lot of music. And so I kind of fell in love there. And as I kind of like middle school time, I realized if you asked bands to send you, or record labels to send you stickers, and you handed them out, they would then send you more stickers and maybe even t-shirts or CDs or concert tickets. So back to the street teaming Annie mentioned earlier, I discovered that if I reached out, I could get this stuff. And so I connected with Warner Brothers Records first and foremost. And at one point was their local field marketing rep, which was like it was a paid position, but I think I was like the youngest person ever hired by Warner Brothers Records. And of course, I was expecting to get stickers for bands I really liked. And I would get sent like a stack of stickers for Disturbed's new album. Or one time I had to go and put stickers on Nickelback CDs saying they were Grammy nominated. So it was always all over the place. But I loved music. And through that, I got involved eventually with AEG, and through, which Annie mentioned earlier, a big cons promoter. Back then they were called Chuck Morris Presents, and I worked with another group called Nobody in Particular Presents. But again, street teaming for concert tickets. One thing led to another. I went to school at CU Boulder. And eventually I was working with the band Vodka, doing day-to-day management for them. And kind of in that world, I also was still working a little bit with some AEG stuff on some festivals, Mile High Music Festival, Snowball Music Festival, a few other ones. But when I was at Vodka, all of a sudden I got a call one day from someone that I had helped get a job at the Fox Theater. And she said, hey, I have this really wonderful person. Her name's Annie. I think you might like to meet her. She'd be great as an intern for you guys. So met up with Annie. Turned out it was Annie Geimer, who I had gone to school with. And so had her come work with us. We had a boss at the time, Rob Thomas, who was basically the day one manager for Vodka while I was handling more day-to-day stuff like a business. This was circa 2010 when they were like headlining Red Rocks at the Symphony. So, riding the wave, A Little Miss Sunshine, had some other big stuff, and, were really doing well for themselves. Annie was my intern for about 2 weeks, and then she elevated to same level as me doing stuff, and then eventually started to work on a lot of the more festival things she was mentioning. So, so our backgrounds are really in music. But the one other thing that kind of brought us together is while we were working through all this music stuff, I met a guy named Greg Zemba, who is in a band called Rubedo. And at the time, he had just opened up a DIY space called Unit E. He had a friend, Thaddeus Mile, and then Kayla Martin were also involved. And there were obviously a lot of other people around. But those three kind of started this thing. And then I kind of came on, I don't want to say as like the fourth, but as a major partner who would, get really active in it. So getting involved in the DIY arts community in Denver, this was a very cool space. It was a second floor above a tattoo parlor at 12th and Santa Fe. It was definitely at the beginning days. The Thad and Greg were sleeping there on mattresses on the floor, and then they'd have to put them up every morning. So, whoever was renting it or whatever things they had to do could get done. So, that definitely like true DIY era type of thing. And it was great. Annie, how did you connect with Unity, Annie?
I think I met Kyle, who was the lead singer of Rubedo, on the street at UMS. And I met Thad there too. And I just became friends with y'all and would show up to Unity things. But yeah, I think that's how I came through.
So it was a great little opportunity. A bunch of us fresh out of college. Some people obviously didn't go to college, trying to run a space, early 20s, up to some people in their 30s. Great experience. And it all kind of turned into a festival called Blacktop that happened in 2012. And that's I would say, a very coalescing moment for Annie and I and the theater district and everything else. So I can get into what the theater district is separately here in a minute. But effectively, our DIY space convinced this arts nonprofit to give us a bunch of money and opportunity to throw an arts festival in downtown Denver, in and around the arts complex. The head of the theater district at the time, I had actually known from scorekeeping men's basketball games at rec centers. So I remember seeing, picking up sweaty jerseys and, all the other stuff. And now here's this guy that's currently our boss still, but reconnecting with him. And they were doing an art thing, and I can get into kind of theater district stuff later. But it was a really cool way for us to take our DIY community, try something unique, pay people to do it. We're always kind of on that side of it, and, explore, and really kind of led to us thinking about stuff in a different way. Personally, I wanted to get out of music at that point. I love it, but it's better to keep some of your core passions as like not your day-to-day job. And the art scene, which was relatively new to me, particularly through the DIY community, was just great. And that DIY time was a very fraught time as well. It was definitely like we had plentiful space, but the marijuana industry had just come, so we were starting to lose a lot of spaces. And then, of course, other things like the ghost ship tragedy that had repercussions across the country. There was just a lot happening in arts at that time, but we were definitely young and in the right position and kind of knew the right people to be a part of a lot of that.
I got a weird question. So how you got involved in the music industry when you were younger, is that avenue open for young people anymore? Can they still kind of do that kind of style?
It is, but it's also different because when I was there was kind of, we'll call it the tail end of the CD era. Like I collected records and I'd make the record label send them to me and they'd be like, you want these? And because that was also basically the bottom of record sales, which as you know, now we're high up again.
Right.
If young people want to do it today, there are lots of opportunities, but it's all done digitally. Like they would have me try everything from, I remember one point when I was a college rep for WIA, they were, which is Warner Electro Atlantic Records, a distributor. They were trying to have me convince like college kids to buy music videos on the Xbox store. I at one point got promo that was like empty CD sleeves, with the idea being, well, just burn the song you can download for free online and do it. But of course, handing out an empty CD sleeve is the dumbest thing ever because people are looking for the CD. Nowadays, it's all been replaced by social media. So if you want to get involved, it would be doing posts, doing videos, and most likely there's probably a scoring system going on somewhere. Or it's, the band's identifying some of the top people in some markets that they could then ply with swag or posters to hype everyone up. But the difference being when I was there was still a big element of hang posters, go to concerts and hand out flyers. Here's a bunch of stickers. The music industry had budgets because, again, they were still kind of drunk off CD money. That nowadays it's all getting funneled into, we'll just pay an influencer. So, it's different. I think I was in a position where anyone could get in that stuff. Now you'd have to almost show you have a following in a certain way in order to get these opportunities, but they still exist. And, it's just like the whole music industry, it just changes all the time based on what the public wants and where the money is.
Right. Interesting.
How did this experience in the music industry inform what you do now as curators and producers of art events?
Yeah, I mean, my jump from working in the audio documentary world to wanting to be involved with music, I think I was trying to just find a passion and an interest. And at the time, music festivals were really popular. And I thought, oh, maybe I could do that. I'm interested in that maybe. And it was easier at that time to sort of follow a new passion, I think. So I, started street teaming, and then I became the intern at the Fox Theater in Boulder. And then when I started working with David, again, Rob, our boss, was doing Snowball and Snow Globe, which were two big music festivals. And I was put in charge of figuring out the vendors for them. Who are the artists and different people who are going to come and sort of make these vendor villages and be the additional entertainment alongside the music for the festivals. And I don't even remember how I did it, but I, probably reached out to people and I'm a connector and someone who really enjoys meeting new people. And I'm, not afraid to sort of put myself out there and introduce myself to a new community and sort of figure out who I need to be talking to make sure I'm connected with the right artists. But I think that was sort of my first foray into planning in that way, and really appreciated the project management and operational side of festivals, because that's my nerdy side. I really like functional things and things that are well managed, and I'm good at it. I'm organized. And I think there's something very satisfying about that to me. I eventually got a job with Superfly doing their music festivals out in San Francisco. And I moved to San Francisco. I lived in a commune with a bunch of people. It was a really hectic experience. But again, I feel like I've always been able to follow things and say yes to things and be supported through a network of people that I meet. So, I got this job very last minute, and I needed to move right away. And I, didn't know where I was going to live in San Francisco. And I had met these people through doing Snow Globe in South Lake Tahoe. And they happened to have this commune in San Francisco 2 blocks away from our office. And they said, you can come live with us. So I moved to San Francisco, did that, and the festivals that Superfly was doing at the time was Bonnaroo and Outside Lands, and we had a food festival in New York, and I really enjoyed the, process of putting all of that together. You had art, you had music, you had food, how all of those things collide. How do you curate that experience for people? What are people interested in? What are fun collaborations and matchups between those, arts platforms and genres of things that you can kind of play off of and riff off of, and being around people who are just like immensely creative was just very inspiring for me. And so I got lucky that, I linked back up with David when I was living in San Francisco, and he was starting the theater district work, and he said, "Hey, I need an operations person." And so I came back in doing that. And again, we had a lot more like events-based stuff, and we can get into that. But I think the slow trajectory of me, working around artists in college, my strength in communication, my interest in sort of compiling experiences and creating and curating experiences from top to bottom has led me to, a really comfortable position for myself here in the arts. And it all kind of fits together. I like creating experiences. So
at the end of the day, music and art go hand in hand in so many ways, whether it's the album art, on a record or CD, the live visuals at a concert, even the photography that goes into all of it. It's very much interconnected. And I always kind of viewed all of the stuff we do as arts and entertainment. And sometimes that can be controversial. There are people that are like, well, what I'm doing is not entertainment. And I'm like, well, maybe that's how you perceive it, but I perceive it as it can be both. So, my story comes from, I found out the arts world through all this stuff through literally the package designer and album artist for one of the Vodka records, this guy, Greg Carr, who I had known from another band I used to help out called the Boulder Acoustic Society. He recently passed away, but he was a very cool local guy. He loved papercraft. He was quite the character, and he did all sorts of stuff with local other Denver luminaries like Chris Daniel and the Kings. He had done a lot with Steve Martin and all sorts of fun stuff there too. So it's, a cool local guy. But again, it was my intro to the art was through the music, and then meeting all this and seeing more. Another thing is, when you're at certain ages, there's obviously those certain things that really stick with you. And for me, it was always Adult Swim. Here was a television channel that like showed me cool animation and stuff I thought was fun, but at the same time also introduced me to groups like Tycho, Gorillaz. They used to show in those early days music videos up there. Daft Punk, Interstellar, the cartoon they made, like that used to be on Cartoon Network well before Daft Punk got really popular. But there's all this other really cool stuff. And so I think, the music and arts to me are all kind of together, and making that transition away from music entirely into arts, which I think Annie and I, are more so in now. Not to say there isn't still a musical component, but, doing that is just also kind of a natural evolution of just where we found ourselves. I would say our last big festival was Grand Doozy in 2016, 18. When was that, Annie?
Gosh.
Sometime before COVID, we threw kind of one big music festival, which in a way was probably the last big music festival you're going to see in Colorado at this point, or at least in Denver. But good experiences.
Were you guys friends in high school? You said you went to high school together. Did you run in the same circles?
What am I, 2 years older than you, David?
Yeah, 2 years older than me, two grades above me.
Yeah, I think we were aware of one another. And certainly when, I got connected with him 10 years later, I remembered his name and knew who he was. And I think we were friends, but we weren't in the same class. So we saw each other. Yeah.
I mean, she was the cool older person. I'm this young guy. But what I did was wearing a shirt by the band The Vines one day. And I think Annie commented on it. And I will always remember that. I might be mistaking that too, but I'm pretty sure that happened. And it was like, I felt really cool that maybe a senior was looking at me or whatever it was.
Do you ever think back to your history and past and how all this convergence has happened and just go, wow, that's pretty amazing that this is where we're at now after all these, your separate individual experiences, but your experiences together?
Yeah. I mean, it's incredibly serendipitous. I was just thinking about it the other day because this is my 13th year working with the Denver Theater District. And then I thought, well, I've known David for that long. And then I said, oh, wait, I've known him since high school, but we worked together also, 6 or 7 years before that. Like it just feels like an eons. So it's great. And we work really well together. And I appreciate David very much. And he thinks differently than I do. And our energy works really well together. And I'm grateful for that.
It's nice to
As
have
am I.
that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely what we've accomplished together, neither of us probably could have done on our own. And it's been great to see. And I think having the things like a Grand Doozy that was a one-off festival for us. We worked on it together, and it wasn't through Theater District. It was still something, we've had a lot of these projects we've worked on with the Denver National Airport. We've worked with History Colorado. We've worked with the Lodo District. We've worked with a bunch of other groups. And independently, we've also done a whole lot of other, independent things. So yeah, it's really cool to kind of have the crossover. And, one other thing with me is I went on the Warp Tour when I was on the summer between junior and senior year of high school. So like, I was on a bus of land called Gym Class Heroes. This was kind of before they got a little bit bigger, but it was one of those things where I was way too young, as in I didn't fully understand how difficult like a tour, like a Warp Tour would be, sleeping on a bus, working all day, especially stuff like that. So one thing too was I learned pretty quickly, I want to stay in one place, particularly Denver, because I just love it here. So, having Annie do the festivals and then come back and stuff too, and work with us, it's been awesome too, because I think she understands that Denver's a really fun place and there's a lot we can do out here.
Do you initiate like some of the festivals that you worked on in the past? Do you initiate them, or are people like having these ideas and then contacting you?
It's a mixture. I would say that, it's been a little while since we threw what I would consider to be a true festival. We still would like help out with other people's a bit. The closest I was throwing the Denver Derby party for a few years right after COVID, because that's another part of the story of Theater District we'll get into. But I don't know, Annie, what do you think?
The festivals that I worked for, didn't initiate them. I can't take credit for that. Working for Superfly was an incredible experience. And I think I don't actually know when AEG started. David, you probably know their winter festivals, but I think we were just both behind the scenes doing that operational work and being privy to how they come together. And the Grand Doozy Festival happened, I guess, because I used to work for Superfly, and Superfly produced this festival, and they reached back out to us, even though I haven't worked with them for years. And Theater District, our boss, and David, he's also named David, we all supported in that in various ways. So, I think we're all super connected, and we ended up supporting each other where we could.
With Grand Doozy, though, I would like to point out that was something that was kind of between Annie and I really helped get the ball going. I had this new position. I started work for the Theater District before Annie did by about almost a year, I'd say. But what had happened is after we threw our Blacktop Festival, I was still kind of very excited on festivals. This was still kind of, I would say, peak festival culture before things started to kind of go under. And I always thought it'd be fun of a music festival that I could also like walk to from my house, and ideally one I don't have to work while I'm there so I can enjoy it. So again, we knew the right people. We knew who to talk to and how to make these things happen. And so it was kind of like me encouraging, Annie to ask her bosses. And of course, everyone had always thought about bringing more large festivals to Colorado. So it wasn't necessarily like trying to convince them to bring it to something in a disparate place. But really, it took that kind of like, okay, there's a lot of moving pieces. How do we put them all together? And so people like our boss, David, could help get us in front of some of the important city people. And, we could figure all that out. I would say that sometimes like Blacktop was 100% myself and the DIY crew at Unity. Annie, of course, was a big part of that, even though she wasn't really as core in the group. I don't know if you were even living here full time yet, Annie, but I think it was, she was involved. She was there. And so, yeah, we've been on all sides of it all. But I would say when you talk about these large festivals, the ones where like Stevie Wonder headlines, those are multi-million-dollar endeavors. And we did choose to work in an arts nonprofit for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk a little bit more before we move on about this special relationship that two of you have together. David, talk about some of Annie's strengths that she brings to the table, some of her skill set that maybe you don't necessarily have, but it works between the two of you as far as your working relationship here. And then I'll have Annie do the same for you.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is I have the ultimate trust and faith in Annie. So whatever she wants to do and opinions she has, I stick by 100%. And over time, I've learned that she's just really smart and really well attuned to a lot of things that I personally may not be. I would say the first thing is Annie has a really good eye for things like design and style. I'm not joking when I say she basically dresses me most of the time. Her and her husband has a store called FM, Matthew Brown, and it's great, but it's also like I literally had her come over to my closet and help me go through it. So it's even from that to I want her to almost be the artistic director on the brand level of Theater District, right? Like that's how I want her to do those roles. I think she does it maybe begrudgingly at times, but like it's great to have her realize that she's got a very good eye for this stuff and an understanding of how it all interplays. So it's not just a logo; it's a color scheme. It's how we're presented. She handles our social media for a reason and things like that too. Also because she's good at it. Additionally, she's got a very good eye for art. I will be honest, I view myself more as a facilitator than a curator. Annie, I do view more as curator. And so that, also helps out too, where I just want to kind of make people happy. And if an artist sends me a bio or statement that has some typos in it, I may or may not fix those. Well, Annie will definitely go through the fine tooth comb and make sure everything's really there. In my mind, it's, well, this is what the artist wanted. And he's like, well, no, let's make sure the artist is not just what they want, but putting their best foot forward. I could go on and on. Obviously, her event skills where we kind of first met were second to none. That's why she was always in demand for all those things. And of course, like the number one thing is her just relationship abilities and management and all of that. She's a very empathetic person and I think is really, really good at understanding the people side of all this. One thing working in music, it's a very different type of world. People tell you how they feel right to your face. It's definitely a lot more like, if there are emotions, it's a lot more charged like directly at you versus kind of either simmering behind the scenes or just, people internalizing it and making art from it. So it's nice to kind of be in an arts world where you do have to do a lot more of this. Because again, these aren't just people's paintings. They might be something that really speaks them or story they want to tell or them fighting with some trauma. And I think Annie does a really good job meeting the artists where they are and working with them. So those are just a few things. I could go on and on about all the stuff that she does, but no, I think Annie's fantastic. And without her, I wouldn't know what to do. And it would be a very different world.
Thanks, David.
That's a pretty nice endorsement, Annie.
It's a very nice endorsement. I'm very flattered and appreciative. Do I get to brag
Your
about
turn.
David now? It's my turn. Perfect.
Yeah. We're going to flip the script here.
I love it. No, thanks, David. David is someone that again, just as he mentioned, I have a lot of trust in him. I think that we've cultivated this relationship over a very long period of time and we're close in the sense that we can really work through things. We've had challenging experiences together, and I feel like he's someone that I really believe is a great listener, and he cares about, what I have to say and my feelings, and we can pretty much conquer anything together. And I think that's a really special relationship to have with someone where you feel like you can tackle anything. And, again, I alluded to it before, but we think very differently. David is a very smart, knowledgeable person. He's a critical thinker. He has great critical thinking skills and is always analyzing, a situation from every different angle. And I appreciate coming to him and talking about, something that's happening in the city or something that's happening in our community or in the arts world. And David's going to, give me a very complete analysis of what he thinks happening. And I appreciate having that sort of intellectual dialogue with him. And I think that helps us in our work it goes a long way. So I also love that David is into a lot of niche, weird things. He's incredibly eclectic in terms of the music that he listens to and the obscure, I don't know, subcultures of another, arts world or culture or country or whatever that he's tuned into. And I appreciate him coming to me and telling me about some weird thing that I'm not aware of. And I think that keeps our relationship really fun. And we spend, we have a weekly call, and usually the first half is David telling me about, some very random cultural thing that I should know about. So I appreciate that. And he's a great public speaker. He speaks so emphatically and wonderfully about what we do, but also his own passions. And I admire that. And he's very ambitious. I think that that's something that motivates me to continue to work hard. I think we can get into this later, but there's a real tendency in our culture right now to lean towards nihilism and thinking about how nothing matters anymore. And why should we put all of this energy and fight into something? And I think that I don't want to live my life like that. But I think that David always is the person who's like, okay, what are we doing next? How are we going to push this further? What's the next big play we can make? And that's very inspiring to me. So
it's all very interesting to me as a music fan and somebody that just, loves music, listens to music all the time. It's interesting to hear your backgrounds and your experiences. So Annie, what is one of your craziest experiences that you ever had working in the music industry or behind the scenes doing these festivals?
I think I worked at Outside Lands a couple of years, and they needed someone to go pick up Bob Saget and um, who's the other Uncle Jesse? What's his name?
Oh,
Stamos. Thank
yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, I guess I raised my hand faster than anybody, but I had to take a massive black SUV that I probably shouldn't have been driving and go in the middle of, rush hour traffic in San Francisco and go pick up two very famous people and entertain them on the way to this festival. And it was a lot of fun. I mean, that's the perks. The music festival industry is so tough. Like, the people who work those events are some of the hardest working people that I know. It's a grind, and you're there from the morning till the way early, hours of the next day. And it's tough. And you have to just put one foot in front of the other and really put on a show and put on your best face and try to be a good host. And that's something that I really care about. And so I got to, drive Bob Saget and John Stamos around, and we talked about all sorts of random things, including Greek yogurt. And we sang the Full House intro song. And yeah, it was great. So that was probably one of my top ones.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Very random. So
yeah. Was Bob Saget really funny? Off?
He was. Yeah. They were both cracking jokes. They were, probably intoxicated and having a good time, but it was a lot of fun. They were very friendly, very kind. And it was, once in a life sort of thing. So.
And he's famous for telling some of the dirtiest, foulest jokes ever.
Yeah.
So, in fact, there's a whole documentary on it that he's part of. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny.
David, how about you?
Well, I mean, nothing can beat being 17 years old, turning 18 on the Warped Tour. The only people older than me at that point, or younger than me, were Hayley Williams, the singer for Paramore, who was still in her, going to Bible study phase. But like, that was a weird era where like NoFX was just, it was kind of core emo, like that pop topic emo. So it was always funny to see like NoFX just make fun of Under Oath and stuff like that. And, it's a good time. But, I got a lot of interesting stories. One of my favorites is, I mentioned Weird Al being one of my all-time favorite artists. And one time I went to Summer Jam at Fiddler's Green. And this was kind of, I think I was done with AEG at the point. Summer Jam was a big rap concert. It was headlined that year, co-headlined by Kendrick Lamar and Tech Nine. Show you kind of where the world was 2012, maybe a little later, 2013. The openers were all sorts of random ones. One was Iggy Azalea, who had a hit song on the radio. So I'm at Summer Jam at Fiddler's Green. I'm walking around backstage, and they had just started some new construction. So there were all these weird new buildings, and I didn't know my way around. And I opened what I thought was production door, and I look in, and I see a guy, and I'm like, oh, this is the wrong one. And I close it, and I'm like, that looked like Weird Al Yankovic. Why would Weird Al be at KS 1075 Summer Jam with Tech Nine headlining? So I didn't really think anything of it. I was just like, didn't want to bother whoever's in there. So I walk around and I run into Rob Thomas, who was our Devotchka manager. He was managing Fiddlers at the time. And he's like, yeah, Weird Al's here. And it turned out he had come out because he needed to get Iggy Azalea to sign off on his parody of Fancy, or whatever song he parodied. And so one of the best moments of my life was standing backstage, and as Iggy Azalea is coming off stage, Weird Al runs up to her. Hey, Iggy, I'm Weird Al Yankovic. I've parodied songs, and like I always ask for permission, and Kurt Cobain even gave me permission. And it was just amazing to watch him do this thing. And of course, she has no idea what's going on. I don't know if she even knew who he was. She's just walking off stage. And it was just one of those cool moments where, again, we get a little starstruck very rarely, but you're kind of hearing stories from both of us. That was a cool moment. It's that type of thing. We have plenty of stories of being at a festival where a microburst comes in and destroys something, or you got to figure something else out, or, I spend hours blowing up beach balls for them to all get immediately deflated because they're cool swag for kids and, all those things. So music industry was fun. It's definitely changed a lot since those days, but they were good ones.
Yeah.
Right on. Great stories. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the Denver Theater District. What is it? What does it do? What does it facilitate? And what is its mission?
Yeah, I'm going to start by giving some history on it. So in Denver in the 1970s, they had a moratorium on outdoor signage in downtown Denver. They didn't want billboards downtown, which I get. Billboards are an interesting medium because they're the one type of advertising there is no public benefit. You think about radio, you got ads, but the radio is free. A magazine's subsidized. Facebook, any of these places are free because of the ads. Billboards monetize your eyeballs and give half the money to a media company, half the money to the building owner. That's generally the model it's done. So you look at Times Square, New York City, all the money goes to either building owners or media companies. And the middle of all that is the city that gets a tourist trap, but they don't necessarily get any real money or, other things from it. The closest arts program they have is the Midnight Moment, where they take over all the screens and show art all at once. But I want to say it's 3 minutes. I don't think it's every night, but it's, it's different things. So the city had no billboards, especially downtown. And then about 25 years ago now, they rebuilt the downtown Denver Convention Center. And when they rebuilt the convention center, things, especially conventions, just took off in this state. So we had a lot of groups coming into Denver, and they would throw events like, let's use the auto show. And you'd have this big auto show, tens of thousands of people come out, but there was no legal way to advertise Jeep outside the auto show, right? They could put a Jeep out there, but there was just no other option. And so the city, about circa 2007, 2008, realized that there was a need for kind of signage downtown. At the same time, 14th Street, which is a major thoroughfare in downtown, was going through a kind of rethinking, and they were creating something called the 14th Street Ambassador Program. And this whole idea was people use the street. I mean, it's got the arts complexes, it's got University of Colorado at Denver outpost, it's got the convention center, all in this one strip, but it's dark. It doesn't really have anything going on for it. No one really, wants to walk down the street. So there's an effort to kind of turn that street into something a little bit bigger. And that's when this idea of, well, what if we put up some screens downtown, but in the first of its kind idea, the city benefits as we create a nonprofit that gets 15% of the revenue and 15% of the time on the screens, maybe 20% of the time on the screens, and spends it on cultural programming. So John Hickenlooper was the mayor at the time. And in 9 months, they kind of took this idea of what if we bring signage downtown and had all these things and made it a reality. They had to go through every single building, and we're a 16 square block area, and look at the facades of each one and say, you could put a screen there, you could put a billboard there, you could do art on there, or for many buildings, you can't touch this at all because it's either historical or they just didn't want it. So basically this plan was created. The media companies at the beginning were a little bit like, yeah, we don't like this. But when you think about it, their options were, we'll either get $0 or you get what you were thinking you're getting, just 15% less. And, at the beginning, they were very not into the idea, but nowadays they actually we've helped other arts theater district concepts in other cities. So now all the media companies are very into this idea because they figured out it's a way to get them into areas that were previously inaccessible. And they do gain a lot more goodwill when they're actually doing something for a community versus just advertising and adding light. One other thing to think about is light is a benefit. It makes people feel safe. If you're walking downtown, you'd rather walk down the lit street or lit alley than the dark alley or the dark street. So in a way, we also kind of figured out that these screens are providing extra ambient light in a positive way that's also kind of monetizing it. So, in the early days, we're a very small organization. Now we've grown into about a $1.2 million yearly budget, but still with a team of, when I started, it was 2 of us, and, it's 4 of us now, but has never grown really above that. Annie, I covered history well?
Yeah, that's good history. And then we can talk about the programs that we've developed from that.
So real quick, let me just say 2009, it was created. We did Blacktop, which was really our kind of first thing in 2012. And then that led to kind of everything from there. So I joined full-time beginning of 2013. Annie, I think, came back October 2013. So, we've basically been there from the days that we started to have any budgets that were more than just trying to do small programming at the arts complex or something.
Gotcha. So we're talking a 16 block area that the Denver Theater District facilitates some kind of programming.
Yeah. And really it's more about where the screens were allowed to go, is the idea of, we knew we wanted them on the city buildings, the Arts Complex Convention Center, because that was obviously what the conventions wanted. And then extends a little bit to 16th Street, but basically our boundaries, for those of you that are familiar, would be Spear Boulevard, Arapahoe Street to a little past 16th, all the way down to about Champa Street, and then Champa back to 14th, and then kind of curves around the convention center. So we are looking to expand. We can talk about that later, part of a downtown Denver area plan that came out last year. But really, at the end of the day, the screens will also kind of always regulate themselves, because the more screens that are up, the less money the media companies will make per screen. So it's not all of a sudden we're going to get one in every building for many reasons. The building has to opt into it. The media company has to see value. There has to be demand from the advertisers. But currently, yes, we're 16 square blocks focused around downtown. Our programming, while focused in that area, we do things that extend beyond it because, again, we only have so much within those 16 square blocks.
Right. And I think, speaking to sort of the mission of what we do, initially, our directive was to try to bring people downtown and activate spaces downtown. And so we really worked with the Performing Arts Complex and did events and programming, in the Sculpture Park or in the Galleria, which is the glass covered area at the complex, and try to create, mostly events that would drive traffic downtown. And that was our, the first couple years of what we did. And there was usually an arts focus and music focus, but we were, David and I would do the logistical stuff and the planning, but also really sort of curating the artists into those spaces. We did programming before the holiday shows, and we would get musicians to come out and play to people who were coming to see the performances. And so really paying artists to come out, have a space downtown to, perform or show their work. And that has evolved into what we do now. But we, started doing less events and more art installation based things downtown. So we collaborated with some artists to do some more long-term projects. We worked with Konstantin Dimopoulos, who is known for the Blue Trees, where he as an environmental artist, I'd say, and he came to town, and we, wanted to call attention to deforestation and what's happening with the environment and climate change. And he has a very specific type of pigment and non-toxic sort of material that he coats tree bark with that makes them all blue. So it's a very stunning visual to get people to sort of pay attention to the things that, you're desensitized to in your environment. And that was kind of one of our first forays into doing, installation art-based work specifically in the district. We can, go from there. But I don't know, David, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that's the big thing is we've kind of had 3 different eras of theater district for when we've been around. The first one for us was very events driven. We helped incubate events in Sculpture Park. We would host an early Denver Flea. We would do, beer festivals and other things. We'd try random events. We once threw one called American Gladiator Bandstand, where we had local bands literally compete in field day games against each other that all had a twist to them. So a relay race where first one is you run down and set up a drum kit. Then you have to carry a bass amp. And the third one is tune a guitar, band van Tetris, find the ramen packet, flavor packet, and a big thing of ramen. So, fun like events that we thought would get people downtown. Then as things were going well, probably we'll say this 2016 era to 2019, 2020, we were then told to focus on more installation based stuff. People are already coming downtown. How do you, add something that's additive to their evening, So instead of having to come out for a specific event, a beer festival, they're already coming out for something. Let's entertain them for a few minutes or give them something neat to see. And then obviously the post-COVID time now, we're kind of in this weird middle ground of we're not back to throwing events, but we are trying to draw more people downtown again on top of still when people are down there to give them that one more, more often than not, almost all the time, free activity to do.
How did you navigate the whole COVID thing? How did that pan out for you?
Well,
yeah, it's a tough one because we, kind of go, Annie, do you want to tell?
No, well, I think, just to back up for a second. So we, evolved from doing events-based stuff and then doing more sort of localized pop-up installations that were short-term. And then an opportunity arose for us to take over what is now Understudy, which is the space underneath the stairs of the convention center at the 14th and Stout light rail stop. And that space before and was the leasing office for the Spire across the street. And the convention center had tried to rent it out to a Dunkin' Donuts and a Starbucks, and everybody passed it up because it's a quirky small space and not, didn't have a lot of amenities. So we had an opportunity to take it over and really do, have a more permanent fixture and space in the district. Prior to that, we didn't have one specific location that we programmed all the time or consistently. And this is, a space that we could really call our own. So we opened Understudy in 2017 and didn't really know at the time what we were doing with it or what it was going to be, but we saw it as an opportunity for us to start really digging into supporting the arts community by fostering, a space for experimentation, an incubator, a gallery space that really allows artists to come in and play. So that, was open a few years before COVID. I guess, how many years was that? I can't do the math.
3.
I mean, it's,
yeah.
We had a good couple of years there.
Yeah. And we can, talk more into that, but we had to shut everything down like everybody during COVID. And we're very lucky that we still, had a budget to work with. And we tried to, find ways to support artists. And we did a Detour. Thomas Detour Evans is a famous artist here in Denver who is a fantastic muralist. And he wrote a book. And so we did like an arts book club where we, got people, we gave everybody the book and we got online once a week and we talked about all of the themes in his books. And we tried to find creative ways to, pump money and support into the arts community. But yeah, we were, our doors were shut technically, or not technically, they were.
And if I may just say something, I think we'll clarify too. So our funding is all private. So we are a non-governmental, we're quasi-governmental, and that our board is of people who are involved, with the city, with the large arts constituents downtown, residents downtown, but all our money is private. And so at times we've gone after grants that are usually, we do it in conjunction with an arts group and they keep all the money. We are exploring things like joining SCFD and stuff now, but, for a while, we've basically always kind of had our own pot. And so part of that is we wanted to give that money out to the arts community. So that's also kind of why we do what we do is, how much money can we take from these media companies and then give to the arts community and support the arts community. So I think, knowing that too, and regarding COVID too, like the Nightlights projection installation literally launched November 2019. So I got 4 months before, we kind of hit everything. But again, it's with Understudy, yes, it's more of a space you would go into. So we had some more trouble there with the social distancing, but the projection could still run, right? Like there's still a perfect thing to do during COVID is to go stand outside and see a large scale art. And as far as money goes, yes, I mean, advertising did go down. But at the end of the day, we felt like we were less impacted for sure than many, many other arts groups, particularly anyone in the performing arts. We never got any, whatever the free money the government gave out, that most of it was scammed. Anyways, we didn't do anything special on top of that. We formed a micro grant program, we did our own things, but definitely like everyone else, it was a change, but it was mostly just saying, okay, we know we'll survive this. 2 groups that advertised a lot during that time were medical companies and hospitals and Comcast. So, and we still had a little bit of money coming in. I mean, it was good, but definitely if it wasn't for things like Nightlights, it still gave us a very prominent and things people to do and also support downtown. Even just driving downtown to pick up food at a restaurant or you're staying in a hotel for whatever reason, it's something to do, especially when everything else was closed.
Yeah. I'm glad you spoke to that. Just so I can wrap my head around this, you guys are a separate entity. You're a private nonprofit, is that correct? That is not under the umbrella of the city of Denver per se, or under the Denver Performing Arts Complex. You're your own entity.
Yes, I'd say the main thing is our name is not Rate. It's a little confusing. That was done before Annie and I joined, and it was meant to be we're the area where the theaters are. Now, of course, even with that, there were other theaters that aren't located in our 16 square blocks that were really offended by that name. So I will say it's always been a challenge. But yes, we are truly independent and we are, an arts nonprofit formed through revenue of, outdoor media sales. But at the end of the day, we're really an arts nonprofit. And so what we try to do is partner with other groups, including the city, including the Downtown Denver Partnership that basically runs downtown, including the Denver Center of Performing Arts, directly to support what they're doing as well, but also sitting there and saying, okay, I can't compete with people that are specifically going to come out and see Wicked, but if they're taking the light rail, they're going to walk by Understudy there. So can we capture them for that 5 minutes, or whatever, to give them an arts experience they're not expecting downtown and potentially bring some new audiences to our area. Not to say there aren't art galleries just outside of our district, the museums aren't that far away, but outside of what's now a couple selfie museums, there really isn't a lot kind of right where we are. I mean, you got the Big Blue Bear, but as far as the kind of like non-large scale public art, there's just less of it specifically where we are.
Before we move on to talking about Understudy, talk about some of the other things that the Denver Theater District does outside of Nightlights Denver and Understudy.
Yeah. So I mentioned sort of where we came from. We don't do as many events-based things anymore. We really have seen the need for supporting the community in other ways. And there's other groups who are out there doing events-based stuff. So we really do focus most of our attention on, the Nightlights programming and Understudy. But we have a series of billboards in the district as well that are art focused. So there's a triptych on the side of the Buell Theater that we rotate the artwork there every couple of years. So we curate the art for that. And then if there's, a gap in advertisement on another billboard in our district, we will often put art up on that during the interim before another, company comes in and takes the advertisement or space. And we also, at the end of 2020 or 2021, David and our coworker, Thaddeus Mile, who used to work with us and left 2 years ago, or I guess at this point, year and a half ago, he and David came up with a really great idea to create it. This was again at the tail or sort of end of or middle of COVID, I would say. How can we support artists? What are other opportunities? And what do people want right now? And so they came up with this concept of an Artcade, which is artist-designed games and artist-designed products. So taking an old, nostalgic pinball game and having an artist reskim it, or having, an artist take a claw machine and do the art on the outside and also fill it with their, own art on the inside. And so they came up with this very clever program, and it's something that we've repeated once after that. The second one was much bigger, and we took over a space on 15th and Champa. And so that's been a program that we really love, and I'll let David jump in and talk about it, but it's something that is one of our other sort of core programs that we're really proud of. David, do you want to chime in?
Yeah, these days we have our main kind of things. We also curate art on the digital kiosks downtown. We curate art on the screens and billboards besides the triptych that she mentioned on the side of the Buell. So we still have kind of hands in that. We also support other things happening downtown. The reopening of 16th Street. We definitely, try to do some stuff and things like that. But yes, Artcade is definitely one of our fun ones that I think we could talk hours on alone. We hope to bring it back one day. The biggest thing to realize is it's not a moneymaker, which not that it needed to be. Instead, it's a huge money loser. And that's because in order to properly pay people and to properly pay them for their art, their prizes, everything, and still make it affordable to the person going to it. Our goal is to have, particularly this last round that happened about a year and a few months ago. It was the end of 2024. We want to make sure a family of four could come and play for $17 total or less, and then walk out with a ton of prizes. And when you're, going with those models, it's a really easy way to, do something that might need to have a firm ending. So if we do it again, there might be some changes, but that core element of how do we get a lot of money into a lot of artist pockets? And maybe it's not everyone's getting 10K. It's a lot of people are getting $1,000 or something, but it's also a fun way to kind of engage and get new audiences to engage with the art. I think that was one thing that, a lot of what we do, I mean, now it's kind of changed a bit, particularly when you think about like the gallery spaces and stuff. We don't really go after families. We don't really go after like that type of group. And so having something like an arcade that all ages can enjoy, and of course everyone loves winning prizes, was a very good way to bring some different audiences down to, in our minds, still have a bit of an arts experience, because everything around them was created by generally local artists.
And what I keep hearing is that you're very much for the artist. You want to make sure that these people are taken care of, that there's some benefit to what they're doing and what they're providing, and they're getting paid.
Yeah, very important.
And that looks differently depending on what they're providing to this area downtown and through you guys. Your stipends and that sort of thing.
Correct. Yeah. We definitely, again, try to pay artists really well. I think, both of our histories and sort of appreciating creatives and also seeing the behind the scenes of how our creatives are treated, or, the sort of history of musicians having to work for exposure and artists having to work for exposure. We really wanted to make sure we were, not repeating that same narrative of taking advantage of creatives in that way. And me personally, I'm not an artist. I am just an arts appreciator, and I'm really so grateful that I get to work with creatives all the time and see how they think and see, so the beauty and the intrigue that they bring our world. And I have a lot of respect for that. And so it's something that, David and I take very seriously.
Yeah, we're not public art, but we do view the same way, right? Like we want to make sure that the public feels engaged and that they need it and stuff like that too. So I think when it comes to our focus on the artists, I mean, even with a lot of our installations, it's like, well, the public will either like it or don't, right? Like that's up to them. Art is very subjective. And also, like, are often even going to know what's going on. And so we focus so much more on the artists themselves because they're the ones, this is either a growth opportunity or a way just to exhibit their work or something. So, and yes, I think that comes from the backgrounds we have, managing bands, working in festivals, kind of seeing all that and realizing that, while we are private, we have the public sphere is still kind of our main world we're working in, particularly like downtown and I could talk about it towards the end, but we're launching a new project here in a few months. It's going to be very transformative for downtown. But everything we're doing, again, is it's still like for the people, for the community. And so we try to be as collaborative and open as possible. But again, we hope people also realize there's also only 4 of us total. And, there's a lot of need and a lot of stuff, particularly in the arts world. And so sometimes just gets really hard because there aren't many other groups like us out there in general, theater district. But then when you kind of think about our ethos and our funding, there's even fewer, particularly with the resources we have and the assets to share art we have.
Are you aware of other organizations that are doing like you're doing, but in other cities? And can you address how they're different or the same?
Yeah. So we were the very first one, which is always good and bad, right? Like we learned a lot that we now tell other cities what to do. So when we made ours, it was definitely unique. And then, as I said, the media companies were pretty standoffish at the beginning, and then they embraced it. And once they started to embrace it, they all hire lobbyists. And we're talking like it used to be called Clear Channel branded cities. Now it's just branded cities, right? Like you got Outfront Media, you got these very large, very well-funded groups that have presence all over, not just North America, the world. So, they're going to these other cities and they're saying, hey, would you be interested in this? And realize it's not just the media companies. The buildings themselves are always very interested because it's like good money. Brooks Tower, a residence unit in downtown Denver, just put up 2 screens to help pay off all of the maintenance that this really old building has, and everything else. So it benefits the people who are there as well. But when we first started talking to other cities, it was definitely this idea of coming from that side. Now it's actually turned into the cities are now putting out things like request proposals, or they're reaching out to us because they're interested in this model that they think works for them. One other note is we chose to put our money towards arts here in Denver, but other places could put it towards something else entirely, whatever their neighborhood sees the biggest need. Atlanta was the one that I would say is the second and the most furthest along. We are working on some sister city stuff with them. We already have done a few projects, but they've got screens in downtown Atlanta. They have a whole team and they're kind of doing very similar stuff. The difference being they're quite a few years younger than us. And so they're still in that kind of growth phase. West Hollywood has a big one. They're more focused on the screens themselves and everything else because that's the second biggest media market in the country. So a single screen puts off our salaries in a day level of money for these companies. So that they're more focused on that for sure because, California has a lot of different needs. And then places like Tampa Bay, Sacramento, Baltimore, they're all in very different phases of this right now. And there's a lot of other places that have explored it, but really you have to have a lot of political will because it's a lot of initial work that's very new and it can be hard for people to understand, especially because we're adding all these new layers to what used to be just a sign code type of thing. But really what it's come down to is people have seen the good we've done in the arts community and what we've taken our money and how much we've been able to create assets, support festivals, all sorts of great things that they want to do too. And with cities in particular, cash strapped right now and, definitely all losing the ARPA money that kept everyone's budgets pretty elevated for the last few years. They see what we're doing as a new way to bring in, $1 million a year to just fund cultural stuff in downtowns or whatever other purpose they would have.
So you guys are really at the forefront of all this and innovators in this particular model.
Yeah. One other note, for example, is when we launched, we split the cost of building the screens with the media companies. Nowadays, the media companies would pay 100% for anything going up because, they see enough value and, they want to support whatever nonprofits getting created as well. So even just on that level, seeing the the change over time of, these companies understanding the mission more, and now, presenting it and asking us to help curate art within our own districts, is also a big side of all this too.
And you said that there's 4 of you. So we're talking the 2 of the 4. Who are the other folks involved?
Our executive director, David Ehrlich, the other David that I referenced, who is the one that Moke used to scorekeep for. He's sort of a more behind the scenes executive director. We really get to be the face of this organization. David and I have, been the ones out there that are really sort of repping what we do. And he's an amazing ED. He's very supportive of everything that we do. He just likes to be a little bit more behind the scenes. And then Sharifa Lafran, she is our newest team member. So as we mentioned, Thaddeus Smile used to work with us for the last 7 or 8 years. And I really co-curated and managed Understudy with him. And we also did, the various other programs we mentioned. And then he left because he and his wife had brought a baby into the world. And he's been an awesome stay-at-home dad and has a record label that he's running. Shout out to Unity Records. You guys should talk to them too. They're really amazing. And so David, I can let him speak to it, but we brought Sharifa in to support with Nightlights Denver, and she's an incredible human. She's an academic. She's so smart, really has an interesting background in digital and motion-based art, and runs Denver Digerati, which is an amazing group that's been doing experimental art here in Denver for a while.
Right on.
Yeah.
Lots of good stuff.
Lots of good stuff.
So let's talk about Understudy before we go on to Nightlights Denver. Tell us where people can go experience Understudy. What is the address? How do you find it?
Yeah, so it's 890C 14th Street, which it's underneath the stairs of the convention center at the 14th and Stout Light Rail stop. We have a cool little neon sign in the window. You can see us, but we're, a quirky little triangular space underneath the stairs at the light rail stop. So
how many square feet is it?
700.
700.
Yeah, it's a unique space in that we're basically majority windows. We have a vaulted ceiling. It's slanted high ceilings with floor to ceiling windows on either side of it. And it and really makes it for a sort of little jewel box, I like to call it, where you can kind of look in and see what's happening in this cabinet of curiosities underneath the stairs. And it works really well for people who are passing on the train every day and they get to see and interact with art. So I love our quirky space.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
I've never actually been inside the space, but that's activated as well.
Yeah. So this space is unique in that because we're underneath the stairs, the architecture is such that there's a big gap between the windows of the front and the stairwell above. And so during the winter months, it's too cold to be in the space because all the hot air just rises up into the convention center. And so for the first, 3 years, we did exhibitions once a month. We rotated shows 12 times a year. It was so crazy. And the winter ones were really challenging for us because, who wants to sit in a space that doesn't get over 40 degrees? I mean, it was really brutal. So we switched the format after COVID and do longer exhibitions. And then the winter months, we do the window box program, which are diorama window boxes that fit and slip into the windows and are only visible from the outside. And I run that program for basically from January till half of March as our sort of substitute for being indoors in the space. But yes, we'll reopen for full room exhibitions at the end of March.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I was very confused because a few weeks back, I went to the symphony with my wife. And afterwards, I'm like, hey, I'm right here. I really want to go check out and see what's, what all's on display right now. And I saw that you were open, right? So I go over there and I thought I had been there before, but I had not. Anyway, so I go there and I'm like, well, it says they're open, but the doors are locked and I couldn't really see anything going on inside. So I'm like, I guess this is it. Like these big windows, which I thought were really cool, but I felt like I was missing out. So I wasn't missing out. I was actually experiencing what I was supposed to, but I was very confused in the moment.
Yeah, well, apologies. I wish there was an easier way on Google to explain that we are technically open and that the art's on view 24/7. But yes, the doors were locked and I'm sorry that you didn't know, but you can call me next time, Todd.
It's just me being dumb. That's all. It happens a lot. Don't let the blonde hair fool you,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very cool. And what will people experience when they go there? Obviously, this time of year we're talking these huge windows that have art in them, but like in the summer months where it's actually open and the inside space is activated, what kind of art are you showing? What kind of things can people experience?
Yeah, so we've done a range of art mediums, anything from sculpture to painting to performance to music to video-based work. As I mentioned, when we first opened it, I don't think we knew exactly what we wanted to be or what our niche could be in the community and what sort of purpose we were going to serve. And I think after the first couple of shows where we pieced it together, we sort of thought, there's not a lot of space, project-based spaces in Denver where artists can really come in and try something new. And so we sort of leaned into that. And our focus is, letting artists come in and experiment and play and try something new without the pressures of a typical gallery. So, when you go to a commercial gallery, you have to be or you might not be, but usually are concerned about making work that's going to sell. And you're, sort of signing up to do this contract with a gallery who's hoping that they can, also profit off of you being there. And that's a model that, we can talk about how effective it is, but it's something that we wanted to sort of flip on its head. And so we, offer artists a hefty stipend to do shows there. So we offer a $7,000 stipend. That money is theirs to use. We want them to pay themselves with it, but it also covers their materials and, elements of the show. But we want them to come in and try something. So if you're a painter, but you've always wanted to do a ceramic show, you can do that. Or if you are, an actor and you've always wanted to make two-dimensional fabric sculptures or through whatever, we want you to come in and feel like you can do that. And there's not a pressure of, well, you got to sell work because we need, that's how we're going to stay open and continue this. So it's been a real great run for the last 9 years of having a wide variety of people that we feature and sort of support them through that process. And if an artist chooses to sell work, great. They don't have to. If they do, they keep all of the profit. If they want to do something that's, more programmatic where they're doing performances, we had a immersive opera, group that came in there and did a series of shows. And we've done a couple of group shows and we've done films. And yeah, we've really kind of run the gamut of variety there.
Because of the size and the fact that you have these huge windows and there's a staircase that runs through it, right? It really is more of a experimental space as opposed to a traditional gallery space, I would imagine.
Correct. Yeah. And we like that. We want to play into that in a way where we let artists really push the boundaries of what they're doing. You can drill into the floor, you can, paint every surface of it, you can hang things. I mean, we suspended an artist from the ceiling in there. Like we've really done a lot of weirder stuff that, traditional gallery space isn't necessarily going to say yes to. So it can be a challenge for some artists. It's a really kind of quirky, big space, and they don't always know how they want to fill it or they feel pressured to fill it. But we really try to work with people to help them imagine a show that is much, I would say, a little less traditional than other things they've probably put together before.
Sure.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Mm-hmm. You've been doing this it'll be 9 years this year. Next year is the 10th anniversary. Anything in particular planned to celebrate 10 years of Understudy?
That is a great question. I have not thought of it yet, but I probably will do something. I don't currently have anything on my mind, but I'll definitely want to put some energy into that. So I'm constantly trying to think about, does the model work? Is it supporting people in the way that we want it to? Is there some way that we should be thinking about this differently? Again, there's a tremendous need for spaces where people can come in and practice their skills in a way that they aren't doing and get feedback from the public and really engage with people in a way that, a gallery space, they don't necessarily get to do that. So I don't know, that might mean that I do something completely different next year. I like the way that it functions right now, but I'm constantly kind of thinking about what else could we be doing? Is there something interesting that we're not thinking about that, would be celebratory for 10 years, but also just help us develop what it's going to be in the next 10 years. So
when you're planning the year or as it's evolving, Where does your ideas come from as far as like what you're going to do in that space? Do you have artists like present ideas, or is this stuff that you're kind of coming up with based on what you're seeing out in the community?
It's a little bit of everything. We initially, when we first started, we reached out to artists and selected people for exhibitions that we wanted to work with. And then we also, now I've gone to a submissions-based system where people propose ideas to me. But the process is very iterative. When I curate, I have no background in art history or an MFA in some sort of, arts related field. I really am just passionate about working with creatives and helping them actualize their visions. It's something that I feel incredibly grateful to do. So David and I are independent contractors. So we've always had other side things while we were working for Theater District. And I worked for Meow for 7 years simultaneously, and really enjoyed the process of, sitting with these, immensely creative people who have unbridled imagination and them spilling out their fever dream, and then us trying to figure out how we're going to actually make it happen. And so, the process for Understudy is very much rooted in, some people have an idea that they've always wanted to do, and it's really wild and weird, and we say yes. Or some people have said, I don't know what I want this to be. Can we play around with it? Can you help me figure out what it's going to be? Can we do something interesting here? So it's different for everybody, but I really try to offer a lot of support in terms of developing a concept and an idea and making it happen.
How do artists submit proposals to you?
Well, currently I'm not accepting any new
there we go then.
because we're so busy. I have a wait list of about 40 people for next year.
Wow.
But it's currently a Google form, but I'm going to turn it into a different form through Airtable, and I'll probably, traditionally people have just asked, they'll write into our info ad account and then we send them the submission form.
Gotcha.
But again, a lot of what David and I do is being very present in our arts community. We go out to things and meet people constantly, and it's a joy to we have a lot of creatives here, and I want people to stay in Denver and create work here. And I think David and I are both very proud of, growing up here and contributing to our arts community. And we put a lot of effort into making sure we're connecting with people from, all over the place in terms of the art sphere. So
I just want to quickly say, for all the people out there that want to submit, we are working and trying to figure out ways. Like, that is one big thing that Denver needs, is more project space, places to exhibit art. So we are aware that we want to be able to take every application, and that's become, over the last year or so, even more prevalent in our kind of thinking. So just know we are working and trying to figure out ways to eventually have more opportunities, so we don't have to turn off submissions and stuff.
Well, and I will, thank you for saying that, David. I will still say to people, reach out to me. I want to have you on my list. Come to the next art opening and introduce yourself. And I want to know you. I want to, have even a studio visit with you, even if I'm not currently accepting proposals. I will open that up probably in spring this year for next year and beyond. But I always want to meet people. I always want people to feel like they can have access to what we're doing. So we're just, we need a bigger boat. We need more space. So we're working on it.
So you're booked essentially a year out. Is that how you do it?
Yeah.
And what are some of the favorite shows that you've had at Understudy in the last 8 going on 9 years?
It's a good question.
You're going to get Annie in trouble. Now she's going to be like, I wasn't one of your favorites.
My favoritism. Yeah.
I mean, really, they're all great, right? Like, they're all like your children. It's hard to pick one, but just some of the ones that you got excited about that you thought were really interesting and cool that you've done over the years.
I'm looking at our Instagram right now just to jog my memory, because I think that's, going to help me out here. I need to phone a friend. So I think that one of my favorites from a little bit longer ago was Andy Todaro. She's a multidisciplinary artist, can build a lot of stuff. She's a painter, she's a woodworker, a leathersmith, like she can do it all, but she wanted to do a film. And so she and her brother, who's also a talented creative, went out and filmed this really kind of bizarre short in Abiquiu, New Mexico, and found a way to, string up a giant screen in Understudy. It was only visible from the exterior of the space. And then she set up a phone number that was basically like an active Zoom call where people could call in and hear the audio for it. And it was one of the more experimental things that we had done at the time in terms of trying to figure out how to make that work and make it accessible for everybody. And so that one really stands out to me as, an example of an artist who was maybe used to doing another type of art and then really kind of pushed themselves to do something outside of their comfort zone. And I think it was really successful. So that was one of my favorites.
That sounds really cool and really innovative.
What was interesting about that one too is that literally we used Zoom before anyone knew what Zoom was because they were a Colorado company, and she had just discovered it. Like, yeah, this company's local. And we're talking like 2018, maybe 2019. I think it was 2018. So yeah, when all of a sudden COVID hit, we're all like signing up for Zoom. I'm like, oh, I never expected it to be this relevant.
Yeah, I would think I'm trying to look for this other one. One of my other favorite things about the space is we have a staff that helps me run all of the gallery hours for the space. So we're open Thursday through Sunday, noon to 6 when we are open, Todd. and a lot of our docents are artists themselves or in theater or on some sort of performing arts. And we have a docent his name is Greg Gisbert, and he's actually a very well-known, famous jazz trumpet player who has been a professional musician since he was 18. And Understudy is actually his only other job he's ever had. And I'm not sure how old he is at this point, but that's impressive. And he came to me and said, hey, I'm friends with this guy who is the set designer for Breaking Bad. And we've just known each other for a really long time and we want to do a show. And I was like, okay, what are you talking about? And he's like, well, we want to make a cave out of foam because a lot of the set design for Breaking Bad is apparently like this intricately carved like desert scenes out of foam and want to come in and create some sort of experiential thing. So Andy and Greg came in and made this very absurd, very complicated spray foam hyper-realistic cave. And then he and Greg did live performances, and Greg did, he programmed it with other jazz musicians, and they kind of wore loincloths and crowd around on the floor and drew on the walls. And there was a whole alien, invasion sequence, and it was really bizarre. Super fun and a great way for us to tap into a different sort of community in terms of artists, but also a mix of very interesting mediums. So that was another one of my favorites on this sort of weird spectrum. You have to see the photos for that because it's pretty spectacular. I can talk about the one where we hung an artist from the ceiling. So there's a Korean artist. His name is Sucho. And he was actually a Colorado Springs-based artist in school and traditionally a painter, does really hyper-realistic oil paintings. And for his show at Understudy, he wanted to talk about the commodification of him as an Asian American and sort of feeling stuck in between, his Asian heritage and culture and his American culture and not really knowing where he stood. And so he wore his traditional Korean ceremonial outfit, and we suspended him from the ceiling between two plastic sheets that we vacuum sealed shut and had him sort of on display as this sort of spectacle of a packaged good. So it was really fascinating. People weren't sure what to make of it. We also showed and hosted some of his other artwork that was related to it. That was a weird one and a lot of fun, and something that, again, you're not going to see at a traditional gallery space. And people who are walking by at the performing arts or at the convention center light rail stop were not sure what to make of it. They probably thought we were actively torturing someone, but it was it was really incredible. And I'm very proud of all of the exhibitions that we've put together. I think at this point I counted and I'm at 73 different exhibitions that we've done in the space over 9 years. And again, I have this deep passion for supporting creatives and helping them figure out how to display their work and share their wild, brilliant ideas with everybody. And I feel incredibly lucky.
Yeah, I'm looking at pictures of it, and it looks crazy. It gives me a little bit of anxiety watching it.
Yeah. It was hard to do too. We had him like crawl up on a table, and we had to hit the vacuum at a certain time and then pull the table out of the way. And he, it was a very technical, but also demanding on him physically. He's sort of trying to hold his breath and hold a posture in a position where you're hanging from this thing that's not stable from the ceiling in terms of it moves around a lot. Mm-hmm. So it was definitely challenged us, but we figured out we can hang a whole person from the ceiling.
Oh my God.
That's there crazy. You go. Yeah.
It's amazing what you're doing with this space.
Thank you.
We're talking 700 square feet. That's not a ton of space, but what you've accomplished with it is pretty amazing. Do you do traditional like art openings? Is there always okay. All right. And that probably doesn't correspond necessarily with what's going on in the community at large. Like a lot of people do like First Friday type of thing. You do it outside of that. Is that correct?
For the first couple of years when we were rotating shows monthly, we were kind of having more traditional openings that happened to land on the first Friday of the month. And we were not calling ourselves First Fridays. We weren't affiliated with the South Santa Fe Art Walk, but we would get people who would, be bopping around coming from Santa Fe and stop over at Understudy and then maybe continue on to another gallery. But now our schedule, since I'm doing about 5-week shows, they don't traditionally fall on first Fridays or second Saturdays or anything like that. They're very random. Some of them are on Thursday nights, but yeah, I love having a reception. I let the artist decide what that looks like. We have a separate pot of money for that. So we cover the expenses for, the food and the beverage. And some artists, we say, if you want to roll this into your theme of your show, let's do it. We don't have to do a charcuterie board and wine. We can do something that's more related to what you're doing. We had an artist, Jonathan Says, he was one of our earlier artists, and he sat in this constructed blue cube that he created, and he makes teeny tiny, like 1 inch by 1 inch artworks. Maybe they're bigger than that. And it was sort of like a vending machine, like an art vending machine. And he was, commenting on sort of blue chip art and who gets access to art and who should be able to purchase art. And the artwork was free. But for his opening, he really wanted to lean into all blue candy. And so we had like this, went crazy and bought every type of blue candy you can imagine and had this sort of highbrow, lowbrow art opening. So we, sometimes they're an opening, sometimes it's a mid-reception, sometimes it's tied around a performance that an artist wants to do. It's pretty fluid because we're, again, trying to let the artist really drive what excites them. And some people, want to just more traditional couple-hour opening, doesn't have to have the fancy bells and whistles, but we also try to make it a good hosted experience for everyone.
And for anyone else listening out there that wants to do an all blue candy flavored event, it turns out there's only really 3 flavors: blueberry, blue raspberry, and cotton candy. So you think you're getting all this cool stuff or like chocolate, and then it turns out it all tastes exactly the same, and the novelty wears off almost immediately.
Oh, that's funny.
That's what I'm saying. These are the random things David knows about that enrich my daily life. So thanks, David.
Yeah, if anybody was going to do blue candy, it'd be me, since I'm all about blue.
Okay.
You touched at the beginning of this interview about what's going on currently at Understudy. Talk a little bit more about that, because I think it's pretty cool what you're doing for this month or this 5 weeks.
Yeah, thank you. I do want to give a shout out to Thaddeus Mile. Again, he came up with this concept for the window boxes as our solution to not doing full room exhibitions during the winter, and he hand built these 6 diorama boxes that sit into the windows of the lower windows of the gallery. And he, thought to fill them with art and say, here's an idea for how we can still work with artists, even though, we can't inhabit the space. So I really appreciate and credit him for that brilliant idea. So this is our 3rd year of doing it. We, for the first 2 years kind of had a mixture of, there wasn't one central theme. We kind of, depending on the artist that we did open calls, and depending on the artist, we kind of either let them decide if they wanted to do a theme or if they wanted to just have something completely independent. So this year, one of our big goals through Theater District is giving people opportunities and bringing people downtown to show their work, because there aren't a lot of platforms for that. And so I David and I have partnered with so many different arts organizations, and we get to give them opportunities on our billboards or on the Ikes or on, the various programming that we do. But I wanted to try something different and tap into the Inglewood art scene. So I had met Haley Schneider, who was previously on your podcast, wonderful lady. I met her, I think she came to an Understudy opening and introduced herself, and I became friends with her and was really excited about what she was doing down at Seesaw, and I reached out to her and I said, hey, I would love to give you guys an opportunity to show your work. Do you think there's other galleries that would be open to participating in this? And do you think we can get 6 galleries that want to represent what's happening down in Inglewood and show people, in downtown what's happening? And I really, I'm grateful that she said yes, because it turned out to be an awesome show. So this show features 6 different Inglewood-based galleries. It's N Collective, Seesaw, Space 13 Gallery, Blue Tile, Rising, and Los Fantasmas Artist Collective. And there wasn't one central theme. They all just sort of decided how they wanted to represent their galleries, either through, a collection of, 15 to 20 different artists that all had one piece or focused on one artist. It really ran the gamut in terms of design and artistry, but it's fantastic. I mean, we have over 35 different artists represented in this exhibition. So I couldn't be more pleased with how it turned out. And I encourage people to go down and check it out, because it is, even though you can't go inside the building, it's a really nice little experience on your way to wherever you're headed. So yeah.
That's great. I love that. Go ahead, Todd.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's spectacular. Just like Wes said, those Inglewood is getting a foothold as its own little art district now, and there's some phenomenal galleries. So I think that's really wonderful that you're giving space to these galleries to kind of show off what they do and what they represent, and hopefully getting some interest for people to go down there and check it out, because they have some cool stuff going on.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I want people to always patron the arts and really put energy into exploring their communities and going out and supporting what makes those spaces special. And Inglewood does have a lot going on, and I want people to know about it. And I think, the more that we try to support everybody around us, the better. And there's a lot of interesting people down there that have a lot to say, and we should get outside and go explore more and see new things. So I hope that inspires people to do it.
Yeah.
And what do you have coming up for future exhibitions this year?
So Theater District has been a supporter of the Colorado Black Arts Festival for the past 5 or 6 years. And we, have helped them with their festival, but also done work together outside of that. And we have a group exhibition to celebrate their 40th anniversary of the festival this year. So I'm really excited about that. That'll be 6 different artists. That opens on March 26th. Shout out to anybody who wants to come to that. 6 to 9 p.m. It's going to be great. But that's going to be a fantastic group show that sort of supports the history of Black arts here in Colorado. And then I have a full roster for the rest of the year. And I have Caitlin Tusick after that. She's a really talented painter. She's dabbling in ceramics right now and inflatables, and I'm curious to see what she's doing there. I'm working with Chloe Duplessis, who is a fabulous artist who is legally blind and is doing the Black History Cultural Studies. I can't know the exact name of it, for History Colorado. And she's doing a whole show on the history of the Statue of Liberty. And that's going to be really fantastic. And then I'm super excited. I have, I think I'm mixing up the order, but I have Agnes Ma, who used to be an artist here. She now works in Dallas, Texas, but she's coming back and doing kind of austere, interesting installation piece. Linda Bashara is a really talented ceramicist who lives sort of in Morrison, Colorado, and she's coming up and coming here in Denver and is going to blow up. I think she's really fantastic. I think all of these artists are very fantastic, but I'm excited to see a full room exhibition from her. And Olive Moya, who's a good friend of mine and a very talented painter, is also on the list. So big, busy year, and looking forward to it.
That's fantastic. Yeah, that's fantastic. Hey, I want to ask, kind of circle back to the district. You said that there's plans for expansion, David. What's that look like?
2 kinds of expansion. The first is as a physical footprint. We have interest from upper downtown, the kind of closer to Civic Center Park than where our boundary is, to expand up there. So part of the downtown Denver area plan, which was a big multi-year endeavor by the city itself to think about what is the downtown of the future, particularly in a post-COVID environment where return to office maybe isn't there. And one of their recommendations was, the theater district concept not only enlivens the area and brings, much needed revenue, both to building owners and to, the arts community and everyone in between, but there could be ways to tie it into some greater things happening. So that, I don't know a timeline. Right now the city's a little under-resourced, we'll say. And so kind of the people that might need to be kind of helping us lead this from a city side might have too many other priorities going on. But besides expanding our physical boundary, we're also expanding our programming significantly. So we are launching a LED screen downtown in Skyline Park that's going to be a very community-focused asset. It's going to be kind of like if we had a PBS station that the community could engage with in the middle of, our most vibrant urban area. So still a lot of thinking going behind what exactly will this thing be and how it will be utilized. But it's also something that, once again, we're finding ourselves the first in America to do something like this. Not to say there aren't giant screens in the public sphere already, but they're not ones that you could go and engage with generally. Maybe they're showing sports, or they're running ads or something else. So we're very excited to kind of see how this new, and really it's a new pillar of our programming. It's the same level as Understudy and as our projection program, Nightlights, that opens us up to just a whole lot more and a lot of great community partnerships that we're excited to see as well.
Great. That sounds fantastic too. Yeah.
So David, let's talk about Nightlights Denver. How long has Nightlights Denver been in existence?
So the Denver Theater District did its first large-scale outdoor projection mapping in 2011 on the side of the LA Calkins Opera House. We called it Frame of Mind, and it was a great experience and really kind of the first of its kind in Denver to see anything like it. It was also very difficult to pull off and very expensive. Now, to be clear, it's before Annie and I were involved, but of course I remember this vividly because I like this type of entertainment. So we've always had in the back of our mind since 2011 that we wanted to do more projection. It's very cool. There's a lot of neat stuff. And as someone who doesn't necessarily own any property, we can always talk to someone about using their property as a canvas. So Nightlights really got its kick in about 2018 when we kind of looked at a lot of things and said, you know what? It'd be very, very cool if we could project on the side of the Daniels and Fisher Tower, which is the clock tower in downtown Denver. And we had to do a lot of studies to see how is this actually done. Around the world, these large scale outdoor projection mapping, which is basically just taking a bunch of projectors, pointing them towards a building, and then just shooting as much light as you can to take over the space. Really, there weren't the permanent ones. They were all done at light festivals or one-offs like we had done. So we kind of had to think about this as all right, how would we do it? How are people doing it in other countries? Because obviously in Asia, the Middle East, and Europe, even in South America, there's a lot more examples of this. But outside of Disney World and Universal Studios or Vegas here in America, we didn't really have the same scale of how these things can be done as an ongoing program. Light festivals are prevalent. I think they're very cool. I'm just shocked that people will spend the amount of money they do for something that lasts like 2 weeks, when if they're going to do it the next year, just buy the projectors. So 2018, everything started to coalesce. April 2019, we did a test on the side of the building, and just to make sure that this was even going to look good. Technology has improved a lot since 2011. In particular, laser projectors got more powerful, they got cheaper, and they work better in a way where, back in the day, red was an approximation of the color red because you couldn't project a specific red laser in that way. Now technology is the point where the art I'm projecting is the same art file I'm given, and I'm not changing colors, which, as you can imagine, art is a bigger thing. So, but also it was expensive. So we had to save up some money for quite a few years. But come November 2019, we launched this large scale outdoor projection. It's 10 projectors. Each one is 21,000 lumens. We down tune a little bit, but it's still effectively like 180 to 190,000 candles worth of light we're shooting on the side of the building every night. It runs from dusk till midnight. And, the whole goal behind it was, let's give people something cool and unique to see while they're downtown, obviously after dark only, but also foster a community of particularly motion-based artists. If you're a painter, if you're a photographer, there are a lot of outlets to exhibit your art out in public, whether it's at a coffee shop wall or whatever, print it on a flyer and stick it on a pole. But if you do motion-based work, whether you're a videographer, an animator, even a dancer who likes to film themselves, there's very few outlets for public exhibition. So we also wanted to kind of become this spot of, well, we can now show regularly motion-based art. We were already doing it on the LED screens, but generally we're doing it with our 15, 20% of time where we're just doing it in between ads, or we're doing a takeover once a year. So this was kind of our own asset to fully take over and do cool stuff with.
Wow. Sounds like a huge endeavor to me.
It was a lot. Luckily the group Display Devices that built everything for us, they also built projector enclosures for Disney World, right? They have ones that come out of the water in Disneyland or California Adventure and project on water. So what's nice, we had local partners here who knew how to do kind of that side of tech, because obviously I got to make sure things like the projectors don't overheat. I got to make sure that all the tech is working together. It's turning on and off at times I want to turn on and off. So we had some local partners, and we obviously, doing something like this, got a lot of attention from even projector companies and other artists, because what we were offering was so unique, not just for Denver, but for the whole kind of like projection world, industry and the motion art industry and all this stuff. So yes, it cost about $800,000 to launch, maybe 700,000. If I did it today, it would cost over $1 million easy. And that was mainly because we didn't know what we were doing. But there's like a $60,000 media player that is literally just like an Apple TV style, where I put files into it, but it has an upscaling feature that can take a video and blow it up 140 feet tall by 40 feet wide and not lose the quality. And that's really, some of the core of what we're trying to do. Is it's really about finding the right technology and platforms to then do this and then have it be a consistent thing. When I launched, it was 4 nights a week. COVID shortly after moved me up to 7 nights a week, and I haven't looked back since.
Yeah.
Wow.
I see that there's people actually doing projection, like New York City graffiti style projection there's a projection of the Statue of Liberty sinking into the harbor, and I thought that was really cool. So to hear what you guys are doing, that's really neat too. And the fact that it's art related.
And one reason you can get away with something like that is light is non-damaging. So think of like a mural. You paint it on a wall. You're literally physically damaging that wall. You have to ever remove it. You have to do something. With me, I can project onto a historical building that you could never touch with paint, because as soon as I turn the lights off, it's back to normal. So that's where you start to get some of this, activist style light graffiti, or whatever you want to call it, artivism, that it's out there utilizing these projectors, also because the technology's gotten better and cheaper. So before, you would have to have some sort of like think about lasers even then, you used to have some sort of very special certification in order to get these high level ones that now, for better or worse, you can order off Alibaba. So, you start to kind of get this mass adoption of things like projectors. There's a community out there of like, bring your own beamer. And it literally is, let's just meet up. If we have a power source, we can showcase our art, publicly on this wall. It's a growing field. One thing that I have seen is a lot of artists who have no background in this want to get involved. So we're seeing a lot of people figure out how they can take their practice and turn it into something that could also be projection. Kind of like a lot of artists learned how to make large scale murals when we were kind of in the peak mural time in the art scene.
It's really cool. And you do this in multiple locations?
So the Clock Tower was our kind of first and big premiere one. It's also the one that's closest to my heart because it's just such a cool, unique building. And, after doing it for years, I now have a very good understanding of how it works. We also have done windows that we called Spark. So it had its kind of own sub brand. But that was back when particular, there was a lot of vacancies up and down 16th to downtown. And we were trying to figure out ways to enliven the area. And a lot of people, I would say most people, when they think about downtown on like the higher level governments, people that run it, they're usually thinking about the daylight hours. They're thinking about the 9 to 5s because that's when they're there. And that's when all these things are happening. So I definitely think more about the like 5 to 9s. And, what's happening after the dark or in that kind of evening time, or really 5 to midnight now. But these window projections were a great way to take what could be a half block of nothing and at least after dark, add some activity, add something interesting. And again, light makes people feel safe. Plus, it was way cheaper and easier to do than trying to do like a true artist pop-up, because I didn't need to worry about things like certificates of occupancy. One of the reasons you're not seeing as many like artists just take over these vacant spaces downtown is laws and things like insurance and just the habitability of the space. Legally, it would have to have a working bathroom. So if there is no bathroom, who's paying for that? The building owner that currently isn't bringing in any revenue and now is going to have to go out additional revenue to give the space away for free. All sorts of these societal challenges. Plus, to be fair, the group I was doing it with also got a good chunk of ARPA money, and they were trying to figure out with the construction on 16th how to still make it vibrant. And the other one we do is on the Kittredge building, which is one of the oldest buildings in downtown Denver as well. Has a very long, interesting history. It at one point had a basketball court. I think I heard it was the first one like west of the Mississippi. Unique interesting building at 16th and Glenarm, kind of by the Paramount Theater downtown. We chose that one actually as a backup option. We were originally looking at the Sheraton Hotel downtown, but some things kind of fell apart there and weren't really able to do what we want to do. And so we kind of pivoted last minute to this specific corner that you can look at from the Denver pavilions. And they were a good partner for us because they had, besides just having a cool building, you got to have the infrastructure to like put a projector somewhere and have gathering space for people to see it. So we kind of found this backup option, which is literally a corner of a building that in itself is very cool, but it has also become a lot more challenging. Everything from having projectors on two separate rooftops and how they talk to each other without having any delay, to the building itself is used a little bit more. So, I fight lights in the windows, and those types of things. Plus, it's a smaller canvas. We're not taking over the whole buildings where it's basically cost prohibitive. So we're only doing a cool corner of it, but therefore it's just it's not 3D, but it has like elements of being on that corner space. Completely different way to program it than you do a clock tower or a window. So those are our core ones. I will say the Kittredge, I have been dealing with some tech stuff and everything else, but we're switching a system soon and some other things. So I say between tech issues, construction, and COVID, finally this upcoming year, we're going to get a real chance to see what that projection can be. For example, if I ever do an event, I can treat each side independently. So you've heard of DJ battles. What about having two visual artists do battles with like a single DJ? Because I can treat each its own channel. So there's all sorts of really unique ways that you can potentially engage with this asset. Again, the only thing being it only works after dark because, projection, to take a flashlight outside during daytime and see how much you get.
Right. So how much are these projectors nowadays?
You're basically paying about $1,000 per 1,000 lumens. So right now for about $25,000, you could probably get yourself a pretty good $23,000 to $25,000 projector. If you want to go for the high end ones, those start running like $60K for the same thing. Oh. It kind of depends on, do you want one really powerful projector or do you want multiple projectors? So there's also kind of that, factoring in. And again, a lot of these aren't something you just plug into an outlet, but even the like ones you buy at Best Buy are getting better. I would recommend maybe don't buy your projectors on an Amazon or somewhere like that where you don't really know what you're getting at this point, because at times you'll see these things like this thing can put out 10,000 lumens, but it really can't. It just put out 2,000, but no one's checking the packaging they're doing in China. So That's kind of a big thing. The software itself to do projection mapping, there's free options out there or very low cost options. So if you wanted to, you could download something and projection map your own dresser in your house, which we had an artist do once who's now become one of our, we work with her all the time, core friend artists. When we did it, we just didn't know. We launched 2 months after a big one was done in Chicago. But we were talking to them being like, well, what are you doing? And theirs costs $8 million. And theirs has a live audio component that we just don't because one, complication, and two, just like we want to get the projection first, audio can come later. So, it's still expensive, but it's more accessible. And I would say that at the end of the day, you could get yourself a used projector, even if it has a few pixels out or the color is not great. And some of this free software, you can at least get to a point where to step from that to doing like a full scale building is something that you could learn on your own and would only take you a handful of months versus like years, developing a drawing practice.
That stuff is so cool. Yeah, I'm loving it.
So do you have a team of people that operate these projectors? How does that work? Like, are you physically there, like switching on this? Is it done remotely? Like, I don't even know how this thing goes. So
it lives in a parking garage downtown. Sorry.
So it is, yes. Our projector box is actually a walk-in cooler on the 5th floor of a parking garage. So it's this really unassuming thing. It can all be done remotely, except things when I need to be there live for like an alignment, or if I want to do live testing with an artist or I'm hosting a school group. Otherwise it turns itself on and off. One funny story is it ends right now at about 11:45 midnight because when we built everything out, we literally pulled a Y2K and forgot to put an AM and PM on our timer. So at midnight, it thinks it's noon and shuts itself off. So I just, that's fine. There's still enough time, by the end of it run. But literally, like, that's the world that we were in, is we didn't even think through this. But I used to run it pretty much solo. I had a helper named Benjamin, who definitely been helping me for the last couple of years on, just a handful of things. But Sharifa, we mentioned, is actually the new director and curator of Nightlight. So part of me focusing on this upcoming LED screen and the other things we have planned, like a potential future Artcade, I needed help. And so Sharifa, with her background in digital art through Denver Girardi, who has curated the clock tower every September for 3-4 years, has been an artist who's shown her own art up there and helped other artists with editing. really there is no one more knowledgeable than her to step into this role. Plus, she's a legitimate curator and she's getting her PhD and stuff right now. So she'll take it in directions and a big focus on education with her, which it is with me too, but she's directly in that world. So we're really excited to kind of see how it goes. But really, I'm there when it needs to be. We have our team display devices for tech. We have Sharifa helping out, but a lot of what I do is rely on the artists themselves. And to be clear, we might change our model, but right now we run a 10-minute show every night that loops, and we curate that ourselves, or we have a guest curator. So I would have a lot of guest curation, whether it's a internationally famous artist or just a local person who works at a gallery who seems really cool and wants this opportunity. I think there's a lack of opportunity out there for people to be curators. So the more we can offer that opportunity, the better. Plus, it opens up more art, people I wouldn't know about, access that I might not have. And so there's so many people out there making art, not just in America, but worldwide. One thing that's nice about what I do is we're just sending files around. So unlike having to ship a giant ceramic sculpture, I can just get an MP4 file through a Google Drive or Dropbox, run it, film it on my phone and send it back that night, So it's a world that is a lot more accessible in a lot of ways. I hope I hit on everything there. I think the other thing too is we pay $1,000 a minute. So we spend about, right now between all of our projections, right now our money's a little bit lower because we're focusing on the screen, which was quite a big expense and just cash flow. But normally we'd spend about $250,000 a year just on digital content. And, whether that's paying it to the artist, to a curator, whatever else comes in between those. And at this point, I've shown over 350 individual artists. Some have been featured a couple times. Some were part of, a group program that, might have featured a ton of them. But in general, 350 individual files have been played on the Clock Tower commissioned by artists.
That's crazy.
That's pretty spectacular, man.
No doubt.
Is there anybody else? I mean, obviously this technology is available everywhere. And you said that it's big in Europe and Asia and other continents, countries. Is there any other cities that are doing this kind of thing on this kind of scale?
So they are. And the thing is that what we're doing here in Denver is by far the best. And I'm not just saying that because I run it, but I will, be able to kind of explain it. It's the DNF Tower, the Daniels Fisher Tower, but I call this the people's projector because my whole goal is I want it to feel accessible to almost anyone to participate. That may be, my Day of the Dead collaboration I do with the Arts District on Santa Fe, where we show people's loved ones up there. And then for their first Friday for big, Day of the Dead stuff, we show it in Santa Fe. Whether it's my fundraiser for Humane Colorado, or whether it's the numerous school groups I work with. I want people to feel like this is something they can access. So all the other ones around the country that I'm talking about don't have that element at all. Or they also have other issues where, like in Chicago, they have one on the Merchandise Mart, which is super cool because the Merchandise Mart out there is 2 acres of wall space. So it is way bigger than mine. Again, it's $8 million. It's like 30 projectors to my 10. And it's just a massive thing. Now, they also can't project on the windows because it's still kind of a used area. So it creates it's hard to make art that works up there. So they tend to be very specific on who they want to commission to just be the big names. And their board is all made up of people who are like the Art Institute and the big museums and, powerful city people. So they're not going to let, an up and coming artist from Chicago have this opportunity. They're going to give it to the Nick Caves of the world. They're going to give it to, literally the biggest names in digital art because one, they know that they're going to deliver. And two, they're only commissioning maybe 5 or 6 pieces a year. So you might as well just focus on those. Education is usually limited to like a holiday 2-week takeover, or maybe a dance group gets up there for a week of dance. But, you're kind of seeing that. In other like European countries, you get this element where they can control the space a lot better. So for me, ambient light is a challenge, right? Like I can't make the building disappear. I can't make it look like the building falls down because the light from streetlights still show that it's illuminated. But if we're in Finland where they have a giant light festival every January when it's super cold and 100,000 plus people go out to see it, they can literally make a building seem like it disappears because they can control that ambient light. So, and they've had artists who've been doing it for so much longer. Back when the bulb projectors were everywhere, people were still doing this. They would just stack a ton of those bulb projectors on each other and just try to get as much brightness as they can. The lasers took it to the next level, but this stuff has been, being done in the public sphere, particularly in Europe, for decades now. And then, places like Asia and in China, they can do interesting things like bring projection LED together that create like a whole cityscape. So you can look at this, like, I forget the name of the city. You can look at this one whole city where it just seems like everything is lights and it's using a lot of different mediums at once. But no, as far as what you have, Indianapolis has a projection that can only do World War One themed content. It's on a World War One, monument. That is very restrictive for an artist to be like, that's all you can do. So to have something that's accessible, that pays what we pay for a lot of these artists, like I've worked with artists who've never gotten commissioned before because there's no real way for them to get their art out there. They're not making films. They're not, really doing anything that's monetized. NFTs were there for a minute, but everyone kind of saw those were a bit of a scam. So, it's funny to kind of see how the diverse range of creators that I can work with this program, and how they see their art as it's projected 140 feet tall.
Wow.
That's out of this world, man. It's really cool that we have this here. I have way more of an appreciation for it now that we've talked with you. And you're getting submissions from people from all over the world?
Yes. So with Sharifa taking on, she's formalized it a bit more. Mine was just they would send an email, but now we have like an intake form where people can go and submit their information. And right now, feel free still to just reach out to us via social media, via emails, via our contact forms online, nightlightsdenver.com, understudydenver.com. They link back to Denver Theater District. But yes, we do have ways people to submit, and then, we think about it. Generally, our goal is to say yes more than no, but we also have some, caveats there. We want to make sure that people are doing more motion-based art. We do month photography every other year, which the Colorado Photographic Arts Center, fully curates. I paid them the $10,000. They curate a juried show. We project it for a month. We do some stuff on the screens as well. But otherwise, we really are trying to find the motion-based work. So every now and again, I do get like an abstract artist who reaches out who makes amazing art. But it's also like, yeah, I'm not just going to take the photo of your canvas and throw it up there because your canvas is already being shown at the gallery that you have representing you.
And how often are you changing out these projections? Is it on a monthly basis or how does that work?
So currently it's monthly, new show every month. Obviously there's, one-off takeovers throughout the year, whether it's a school group coming out and seeing, like I partner with East High School now here in Denver that have from, a side project to now there's 2 whole animation classes where like the core deliverable at the end is a projection for the clock tower. And we have East Angel tunes, twice a year now. Outside of those, yes, new show every month. But with Sharifa coming on, one thing is I've been doing it my way for 7 years. I want Sharifa to really feel like she can take in her own direction because, again, she has a academic knowledge of this. She has connections. She's run a digital art organization that has done all sorts of things. So it may become 6-week exhibitions. One of the reasons that Understudy went that direction is people were like, we don't have a chance to see the art before it's gone. Give us more of an opportunity. So we just, extended the calendar for each exhibition. Could be the same with us. Could also be, maybe it's not a 10-minute show, maybe of different art. Maybe it's one art piece that's like a loop all night. I don't know. Sharifa's, going to be thinking about that in the next few years. But regardless, there is still an open opportunity for us to commission art for the projection or soon for the LED screen as well. That, we're always happy to kind of see who's doing stuff out there. AI art is definitely a big side of the world we're in right now. And we're not against it. I think it's one of those things where if it's already built in the Adobe suites, obviously all of these students I'm working with now, it's just built into what they're learning. And so I think it has to come down to, if we are going to project it, which I have, what is the story behind it? What is the meaning? Have you shown that you didn't just download Midjourney and you're sending me your first things ever? Have you dabbled in other fields before? Have you done this stuff? And I'm not also going full AI either. I think it's a very case-by-case basis. But I want to say that, like, when we talk about digital and motion-based art, the world is changing rapidly. And, I've had friends that are longtime animators that have seen their jobs dry up overnight because specific software did their specialized, rotoscoping skill that they learned. But at the same time, they're thinking about new ways to do it. And now they're embracing the AI to help support what they're doing because they're like, well, if I learn something else without it, this could just happen again. And it's a weird world. But again, we're talking about sending files. So anyone that can have a cell phone and film a video could be considered for a program like Nightlights.
Nice. That's fantastic. And I love that you're working with East High School.
Yep. That's one example of the education we do. Yeah.
You're working with kids and allowing them to have an opportunity to get their stuff out there into the world and have this experience.
One of the best things I ever projected was Downtown Denver Expeditionary School is like the closest elementary school to us. And I once partnered with them and we showed art they had made, which is, at second grade is like hand turkeys and like there's spiders on Halloween, and seeing a 7-year-old or 8-year-old's hand turkey on the side of a building like that, everyone loves it, right? Like it's just super fun. And I will say one of the reasons that we're excited about the LED screen is projection only works after dark. So when I'm working with like a summer camp, have their camp hours, and then all of a sudden, oh, now come back downtown at 9 p.m. to, see your projection. Now I can do stuff throughout the day and do it, in hours that work for them versus making everyone kind of work around the sunrise and sunset that, my life is.
I love the fact that people that are traveling to Denver for a convention or what have you have the opportunity to go see art, because a lot of times they're in and out so quickly, but you're already in the downtown area more than likely for any kind of convention. So you have the opportunity to actually take in art and off hours where, a museum or a gallery may not be open and have this experience.
Absolutely. And it's, we want art to be accessible. And I think that through Understudy, we want someone to feel comfortable walking into a gallery space, because we know a lot of people don't always feel comfortable, or they feel a pressure to buy something. And so we want people to, be more curious and say, oh, I actually went into this space and it was, not as intimidating as I thought it would be. And then I also got to see this amazing art that I wasn't expecting to see, or, some of the artists do something that's participatory or engaging, and they, that brightens someone's day as well. And David's done a fantastic job with the content on the clock tower, and both of us really just putting an emphasis on making art accessible, working with different organizations, giving artists and creatives and other arts nonprofits an opportunity to show all the amazing stuff they're doing. And championing people in Denver that are making great art. So we're lucky.
And paying them again, we pay for Understudy, we pay for Nightlights. Like, I have resources for all these educators if they need them for whatever it may be, whether it's buying an iPad to, paying for a bus to get someone out there, or a bunch of snacks. So I think that's one thing too, is we understand that we're lucky to have this funding stream that's dedicated to us. And so we want to make sure we don't have an office. We keep our overhead as low as possible. So, at one point, like 85-90% of all of our money was going directly into artists' pockets, or things that were directly related to getting them the money in their pockets. Now we obviously have things like infrastructure and rent for, projection boxes and what have you. But, again, we still put out well over $250,000. I mean, it's got to be at least 350,000 in just straight artist stipends between the digital and the Understudy. And then that doesn't take into account the documentation and all the marketing and everything else that we'll spend on top of that.
And for people that are curious, like what they might experience or what the artists are that are being projected right now, there's an actual schedule on the website, right? And it has listed all the artists that are currently being projected on the clock tower.
Correct. If you go to nightlightsdenver.com, or Denver Theater District, but we spell it with an R-E. Just go to nightlightsdenver.com. That'll take you to wherever you need to go. You can see specifically the artists. This show is guest curated by a group called Brawhouse, basically a digital art agency and connector out of Athens, New York, and I believe Tel Aviv maybe. But I connected with them through cold emails and stuff, and realized they have a great roster of artists. And, it's a good way for us to, one, expand what we're doing and give artists that might have never heard of me a chance to be involved. So, and these are, some of these are very big name artists that have, their art in the collections of massive institutions, and but they get a chance to go and exhibit their art, A, in a spot maybe they're not normally able to exhibit. Maybe they've never shown in Denver, but B, they have the creative freedom, right? Like, they can do whatever they want for the most part. And we find that to be a very positive for a lot of artists. March is going to be guest created by Rian Crane of, she's a professor at UCD, metal worker, does the big iron pours every year, does a bunch of other stuff. We did hand casting at Understudy once. She had a big exhibition. Great artist. It's going to be all with Irish artists, some locals and some from Ireland, because she's from Northern Ireland. Again, we can do this like worldwide partnership, feature them here, mix them with even some locals, and, trying to build programming beyond that. So it's interesting because this month is a lot more, there's a lot of animation and digital art. Next month is a lot more traditional video work, which, because of the level of brightness we have, we're able to get away with. But it's just a really cool, it's interesting to think that every month you're going to go out and see something very different. Sometimes I'll throw in what I consider some of my best doves back in, just because, who doesn't love seeing the building come alive with true architectural projection? But at the end of the day, I've got so much different stuff, and the audiences are always changing that, you might as well do a little bit of everything.
Yeah. Right on. Before we lit off today, I want to talk about this multi-paneled mural that you touched on earlier. It's called Catalyst. Talk about where people can see this, because if you're not paying attention, you could actually miss it. But it's a really cool mural. And so talk a little bit about that. who the artist is that painted it and the significance of this artist.
Yeah, thank you so much. So again, we rotate the art usually every 2 years. This piece will be up a little bit longer because we're really excited about it. When I was thinking about how I wanted to create work for this next iteration, I spoke to a gentleman who no longer works over at the Auraria campus, but a really wonderful mentor of mine, Jeff Lamson, who, said, "Hey, have you ever heard of Jann Haworth? And would you want to work with her?" And I said, "Who's that?" And he said, "She's, one of the original artists who created the album cover art for the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's album cover. So she's a British American artist. She's an absolute legend. She's a pop art icon and someone who really is I've developed a deep friendship with." But Jeff sort of floated her by me for a different project. And then I said, wait a minute, this is an opportunity to work with an absolutely incredible and very seminal artist. We should sort of think more on this. And so I talked with Jann and we had this sort of natural synergy. She lives in Utah, and she's been doing a lot of projects over the last 10 years around lifting up voices in the community. And so she did a women's history mural, which was featured all women through history. And she uses her traditional stencil making style that you see on the cover of the Sgt. Pepper's album cover. And we sort of developed the concept for Catalyst. So, I thought about what's something that we don't, talk much about in the arts. And it's all of the people behind the scenes who are making the arts scene run. And who are those people that aren't, the executive directors or aren't the, big title members of an organization that really help make the arts function. And so I reached out to over 50 arts, nonprofits and organizations and said, hey, we're doing this project. We want to highlight people. Would you nominate someone from your organization that really deserves some credit and some praise and a shout out? And so I had 35 different organizations. Well, it's actually 33, and we have 35 artists. Some people submitted not artists, excuse me. Some of them are artists, but they're just incredible individuals who support that specific organization. So, we selected, everyone nominated someone, and then we had them submit an essay about this person, which you can read all of these online, and then send in a photograph. And Jann's process is really interesting. We did a workshop here. So she flew out here. We did a workshop with a bunch of the artists and people who were nominated. And she takes a photograph and prints it on large printer paper and teaches you how to sort of cut out the negative space to create a stencil. And it was a really fun workshop, kind of intimidating, but made one and had a great time doing it. And we got to engage the public and the community. And so, they helped us each create stencils for it. And then Jann took those pieces afterwards and created the bodies and the props and the other sort of background imagery that you'll see that really gives each of those individuals kind of a character. And she based those props based on their, interests and, what they're known for, and maybe a quirky, thing about themselves. But it's a beautiful piece. It was then photographed. So she made the actual collage by hand, and then we photographed it and enlarged it to fit this triptych. And it's on the side of the Buell Theater. So if you go down Champa Street, drive down the hill, it's a one-way. There's between 13th and 14th, there is the mural is right there. And I think if you look up the loading dock for the Performing Arts Complex, I think that has a specific address for it, but it's right there, and it's a fantastic piece. And I want more people to know about it because Jann is an absolute legend, and she's known for more than just her Beatles work, but I think she's fantastic. So
thanks for talking about that. And
yeah,
I didn't even know anything about this until my friend Cipriano Ortega, who's on that mural, made me aware. And I was like, wow, man, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And even when I went down to look for it, I was like, where the hell is this thing? Like, so it took me a moment, but yeah, it's pretty easy to find. You just got to be paying attention to what's going on and where it's at. And actually where that loading dock is, I would say, and I've been there at different times of the day, I would say 9 times out of 10, there's a parking spot on that section of the street that you can park and go take it in, walk across the street and really view it well. So
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. It's a project I'm very proud of. And I hope it encourages people to look up those organizations that participated and go and see their programs and donate and support them, because there's so many amazing arts groups here that are doing hard work to keep this scene active. And, not only the people who are represented in the piece itself, but all the other people who participate in that. I admire them, and I want people to patronize what they do. So I hope it supports them in that way.
Nice. Right on. Anything else that you guys want to talk about the Denver Theater District is facilitating or promote before we let off for the day?
I don't necessarily think so. David, do you have anything else?
No, I think just keep an eye out this summer for our new LED screen to come up downtown. If you do want to learn more about any programs, feel free to go to understudydenver.com, denvertheaterdistrict.com, or nightlightsdenver.com, or any of the social medias that Annie controls. And we're happy to, get back to you and respond to you. But at this point, we're going to keep growing. We're not going anywhere anytime soon. And we're very excited to kind of see as we bring new programming on, as well as the continued changes that are happening to, the city and downtowns, not just in our downtown, but other ones too. We're excited to kind of be at the forefront of trying to bring arts and culture to those places, especially as the workers aren't returning, but we're still seeing good tourism and other, residents wanting to go check stuff out. How do we cater to them? So, keep an eye out for the future. But as of right now, if you ever find yourself downtown, give yourself an extra 5 or 10 minutes and stop by Understudy. Even if it's just peering in from the outside, most shows still take into consideration that there are 50,000 people that board that light rail stop every month, at least when it's up and running. And so there's thousands of people that are looking at our art without ever actually fully engaging by coming inside. If you find yourself downtown after dark before midnight, go look at one of the projections. It's at least something to do for a few minutes. You can make a night out of all of this, or you can just do it as you're going from point A to point B, or if you find yourself already downtown. So we're here. All of our programming is free. So, we're not going to make it difficult for you to access. And yeah, that's about it.
Right on. Well, thank you very much. Before I let you go today, though, I do have to ask you this, because you're huge music people. Wes and I are huge music people. What have you been listening to lately that you're really into, Annie?
Oh my God. That's hard. My husband is a vinyl DJ, so I get super lucky and I get to be listen to all of the music that he's playing when he's getting ready for a set. So it's a lot of obscure stuff. Come back to me. I have to think of it. I'm not great at thinking of things on the spot. So I'll let David go and then try to come up with something that I'm excited about.
Yeah, I actually just sent out my best albums of 2025 list on Tuesday. It usually takes me a good 6+ weeks to compile them all with all my thoughts and everything. So perfect timing. I'm all over the place. My Spotify listener age was 16, which is a little embarrassing because I listen to a lot of hyperpop and I guess rap that teenagers listen to. But, other than the ones people already know that are excellent last year, like the Clips album was great. I'm actually going to go see Clipping. If you guys know Clipping, the kind of noise experimental rap group featuring David Diggs, who was in Hamilton. They're playing on Sunday in Denver, so I'm really excited about that. But, some other stuff I recommend that people might have checked out, Jane Remover, if you're okay with a lot of hyper pop and, some pretty intense music, they're making some of the best stuff out there today. I think it's also on a lot of top lists. Quadeca put out a very interesting album. If you've never listened to that, it's I would say folktronica is the closest I could do it. But the album is called Vanisher Horizon Scraper. I would give anyone who's appreciative of well-produced music, whether you like Bon Iver, whether you like, emo rap, like just check out all of that stuff because he's really kind of in his own cool world right now. Spiritual Cramp, I thought, put out a good. I'm really impressed with the kind of garage rock world that's out there right now. Thought the Hives put out, some of the best stuff last year. Electronic, Turquoise Death. You guys like atmospheric drum and bass music that literally sounds like a PS1 racing game. It's so exciting. There are people today that still make music like that. And then for our local Denver, recommendations, Cheap Perfume put out a really great album of punk music that is very timely. They're best known for their song "It's Okay to Punch Nazis," that every now and again has a pretty solid viral spike. That more recently has kicked up even more. Rum Tum, also a great visual artist. I like his music he puts out. It's very good electronic instrumental stuff. And then DNA Picasso, I thought was a great local rapper. So yes, I listen to a lot of music. It is my life. That's probably more than you're expecting, but I literally have a list in front of me that I finally put together. So there you go.
I love that. I love that. I love getting turned on to new music. And I would say 99% of what you just mentioned, I have no idea about. So I will definitely be doing a deep dive.
I'll
Yeah,
forward you guys my list. Keep it
There you
between
go.
us, but
That's
I'll
what I
forward
want
it
to
to
see.
you.
Yep.
there you go.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah, I can't follow up with that. I can't follow that up. Yeah, I don't have anything. I mean, again, I'm
Nice.
very jaded and lucky because I get to listen to whatever my husband's playing. So,
There you go.
yeah.
So I have a different question for you since we're going to let David take this one.
Okay.
I know that you are a culinary artist, that you love food and cooking. So what culinary cuisine is your favorite?
Wow, well, thanks for knowing that about me. I'm not sure if that's written somewhere, but I appreciate you knowing that. Yes, I'm not an artist, but my cooking is my creative outlet. So I definitely enjoy that. I guess, I mean, I cook so many different varieties of food right now. I don't know that I have a specific favorite. Like, I
Do you have
don't.
a signature dish that you
I mean,
serve
I'll
with
just tell you a dish that I cooked recently that I was excited about because that's probably, I think because I go through phases of what I'm interested in. But I made a pasta last weekend that you take carrots and steam them with garlic and blend them with Parmesan and lemon zest. And that sort of makes the sauce for the pasta. And then you make a pesto with the carrot tops. And it's just like a really fresh, warm, satisfying sort of winter, could be fall anytime meal, I guess. But yeah, that's something that I've cooked recently that I was really excited about. So
Nice.
Always digging through new cookbooks. I have, favorite chefs and favorite, people I follow online and New York Times and all of that. But yeah, that was fresh on my mind, I guess.
There you go.
That sounds amazing. David's going to forward his favorites of 2025 to us. Can you forward me that recipe?
Happily. Yes.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
You guys, thank you so much for spending the time that you did today. You're doing amazing work. I'm so happy that we got to talk about all the things that you have your hands in. Keep it up. And I look forward to seeing you guys in person in the near future. It's just been a joy to talk with you both.
Thank you so much. Again, appreciate the opportunity and the chance to talk about what we do. I mean, it's kind of hard to explain what we do and people know about our programs and not necessarily about the whole history behind the organization. And I'm so proud to work for this group and I'm so honored to work with David and get a chance to share more about it. So thank you guys so much. It's great meeting you and spending more time with you. And yeah, hope to see you soon.
Yeah. Yeah, it was amazing. Really proud of what you guys do. Great story. Man, this was fun. Thank you.
But I thought it was fun. Yeah, if you guys need any pickups or anything, let me know. I'm just hanging out so I can help with that too. But yeah, feel free. Hopefully you guys can edit something together that's coherent. But no, appreciated you guys taking the time to listen to our story. Hopefully one day we get a better job explaining it. And, maybe one day we'll get an easier to remember name that has nothing to do with like the theaters. Cause, I can't get you tickets to Hamilton. I'm sorry. It's just not something I can do.
Once again, you can check out all that the Denver Theater District has to offer via the website, denvertheaterdistrict.com, and follow the Denver Theater District on Instagram at Denver Theater District, Nightlights Denver at night_lights_Denver, and Understudy at understudy_Denver. As usual, I'll have all this and more in this week's episode notes. For the Tenet Podcast, I'm Todd Pearson.
And I'm Wes Brown. Have a great week.